I would like you to comment on कि आज की discussion, why is it important for listeners as individuals, as societies, as nations, as subscribers, unwantingly, unknowingly of capitalism. Okay, what is the significance of today's discussion? Why should a person listen to it?
Our discussion today is very significant because we live within a paradigm. This paradigm is called capitalism. It is everywhere. You breathe it, you live it. We're all operating within this system. It is our operating system, but it has a lot of quirks. It has a lot of weird things happening. And slowly I'm starting to see that at a global level, people are starting to push back in various forms against the way that capitalism stands today, particularly because of the pandemic, particularly with inflation, particularly with the monetary contraction happening thanks to the U.S. Federal Reserve, with the currency crisis, with political instability that's coming. There's a lot of reasons for people around the world to be angry with the system the way it is. What we're talking about is one movement that happened around the pandemic, 2021, which led to the culmination of regular people like you and me standing up collectively to push against institutions while remaining within the sphere of capitalism itself. उसी operating system के अंदर रह के उन्होंने ऐसा झटका दिया. And that is quite amazing. So what I'm arguing to you in presenting this book is that there are many forms of dealing with the way things work. Some stay within the operating system, some approach from outside the system. And that's why I think the way whatever is happening right now will have huge ramifications for the next 10, 20 years to come, easily.
और सर इसका भी feel होगा.
अभी तो मुश्किल से बात शुरू हुई है.
So there is a book. We'll add the picture in the video, detailed. उसका link भी हम share से सब कर देंगे. It's this book, Activist Retail Investors and the Future of Financial Markets, Understanding YOLO Capitalism, Routledge International Studies in Money and Banking, by Usman Chohan and Sven van
Kerkhoven.
Before moving to YOLO capitalism, we need to understand कि for people who जिनकी ज़्यादा दस्तरस नहीं है या इंटरेस्ट नहीं है या एक्सपोजर नहीं है इन चीज़ों की तरफ, उनके लिए ये बताया जा सके सिंपल आम अल्फाज में कि कैपिटलिज़म क्या होगा और इसके why is it good for some people or bad for others, majority.
You're asking me to explain capitalism in a simple form to
Simple
the
form,
audience.
layman terms.
It's the perfect question for us to start with. Different people have different interpretations of what capitalism is. सरमायादारी इसका नाम है उर्दू में. सरमायादारी एक इक्तिसादी निज़ाम है. It is an economic system. There is a framework we have in history called historical materialism.
ठीक है.
And historical materialism says that societies move through stages. And capitalism is the second stage. So it starts with stage 0, which is how we used to live 20,000 years ago. गालबन सारे बराबर ही होते थे, मिलजुल के काम कर लेते थे, दूसरे कबीलों के साथ सौदा वगैरह कर के सब. It was pretty good, but it was very small scale.
पहला मेरे ख्याल से एग्रीकल्चरल हो गया.
This is pre-agriculture, the hunter-gatherer.
Right.
The hunter-gatherer, so 20,000 years ago, you didn't have settlements, permanent settlements, migratory and small bands of about 100 to 200 people, and they would pool in their resources into the longhouse. Even Native Americans, as late as 500 years ago, जब उन्होंने discover किया ये सारा देखा, longhouse model. So whatever you could get, you put, and whatever people needed, they would take from there, and that's it. It was a subsistence level thing. It was actually a very nice and sustainable way of living. But then feudalism is, so stage 0 ke baad, feudalism is stage 1. This comes after the agricultural revolution. Somebody planted a seed and saw it grow and said, you know what, I don't think I'll move around. Then it creates a surplus of food, surplus of wheat, surplus of everything that you need. So then you have organization of society in a hierarchy. That's what feudalism did.
शुरू में लोग मिलजुल के कंज्यूम करते थे, रिसोर्सेज को प्रोड्यूस करते थे. उसके बाद उन्होंने जमा करना शुरू कर दिया और वहाँ पे हायरार्कीज बन गई.
हायरार्कीज बन गई, एक प्रीस्टली क्लास खड़ी हो गई, ब्राह्मण खड़ा हो गया. बट in Mesopotamia, the Hittites in Turkey, all these other, the Pharaoh of Egypt, Pharaoh का कितना जिक्र है, you know. So these hierarchies became very exploitative because it meant that some people could be at the top and just decide how things are and extract value all the way up to their level, and people would be at the bottom. But you had huge populations by now, 20,000, 50,000 people, 100,000 people. And then there would be main capitals where this priestly class would be, but then you would have a periphery, and in the periphery you would have lords. That's what feudalism was. कि मैंने इधर ठेका लिया हुआ, मैं इधर के जागीरदार हूँ और यहाँ के लोगों की मैंने मतलब उन पे ये मुसल्लत करनी है. And so एक जाबिराना nizam. And feudalism persisted for a long time in parts of the world. The Eurasian landmass, it was a big deal for a long time. You can argue that our system today in Pakistan is still very much feudalism as well. This is particularly east of the Indus River. And then after feudalism comes around 1600, 1700, capitalism, which involved urbanization. It involved production of certain things at a factory level, industrialization, and you had to bring people from the fields, uproot them. It was a very difficult and painful process. It happened first in Europe, and nowadays it is happening in places like Vietnam. Recently, 20 years ago, it happened in China. From the countryside, you grab people and you bring them in and you put them through hell working in the factories for you. And this created surplus consumption. Capitalism has certain characteristics, which we can talk about. But after capitalism, then there is a contest in historical materialism that you move to socialism. So you organize modes of production where it's no longer the capitalist, no competition between the capital, the industrial power, putting down, giving something to the labor, and the labor exchanges his labor for capital, that cycle of exploitation. Instead, you have socialism, so the laborer owns those means of production themselves. And finally, there's a dream state, stage 4. Some countries still have it in their constitution, for example, the People's Republic of China. This is the final goal when you get towards communism. And what happens in communism as they dream it up is that there won't be any need for such things. There won't be any exploitation. Basically, our job will be to just be creative and chill out. And ChatGPT type things and robots will do the work, and we can just live a decent life. So stage 4 actually looks a lot like stage 0. This is historical materialism. And the 20th century was a contest between stage 2 people and stage 3 people, socialists. Both had terrible forms of exploitation because both were operating in a logic of empire. These guys were still exploiting their peripheries. These stage 2 capitalists were still exploiting their peripheries. And capitalism has certain scary traits. One, and Marx highlighted, is that it's very unstable. Because you create so much, and then it crashes because people can't buy stuff. This consolidates the power once things crash, and then you take whatever you can, you start the system again, so it's up, down a lot. It's very unstable.
Boom and bust cycles.
Boom and bust cycles are inherent in the system. The second is that it always forces resources to the top.
Bilkul.
Inequality is a structural feature of capitalism. You can work around it by adding socialist elements like a safety net, like taxation, etc. But capitalism on its own will take up. The third is that there is a very big power asymmetry in capitalism. So the owners of capital really decide how things happen, and they basically deal in laborers. I don't need this many laborers. I do need this many laborers. So the labor is always in a precarious state, and the majority is labor.
So yeah.
And the fourth is that capitalism spurs a lot of competition, which is a good thing. And capitalism therefore asks for people to compete. And as long as monopolies haven't been created, which they ultimately do, but before monopolies create, you should be competing hard. And one way to compete is to innovate, to have a better product. And then people pay for that. Through the selling of their labor, they get something in return, they purchase your stuff. So it's a very dynamic system. And so it can drive a lot of innovation. These are some core features, then there's some others too.
Pros and cons दोनों ही हैं फिर capitalism के.
बेशक.
Now we can move to YOLO capitalism. लेकिन इससे पहले मेरा एक क्वेश्चन ये है कि कैपिटलिज्म को 20th सेंचुरी में चैलेंज दिया सोशलिज्म ने और कम्युनिज्म ने। जो योलो कैपिटलिज्म है, क्या वो इसी तरह का कुछ चैलेंज दे रहा है कैपिटलिज्म, ऑल्दो इट्स इन इट्स वेरी अर्लियर स्टेजेस, लेकिन वो उस सिस्टम में रहते हुए ही चैलेंज दे रहा है सपोज।
Exactly right.
लेकिन फर्स्ट वी कैन डिस्कस योलो कैपिटलिज्म, very basic explanation.
YOLO is your generation, since I'm a little bit older, means you only live once. You only live once means you go ekal ka kuch pata nahi. Go big or go home. It is almost a sadistic mindset. It's almost a suicidal mindset. Kal ka kuch pata nahi, abhi scene dal do jo bhi dalna hai. You merge this with YOLO capitalism. That's what I did as when I pitched this idea, came up with it, theorized it. Because what it is in capitalism, you have markets as one of the mechanisms to promote the exchange, and markets therefore include the financial markets. In the financial markets, there are today huge monopolies. 6 banks, 7 banks that run everything. They're called systemic banks. If you mess with them, basically the whole system falls apart. So the government has to protect them. So there's socialism for them, but there's no socialism for the people. So YOLO capitalism says that little people can put their savings together or their investment capital together, and they can challenge in the financial markets the big powers, the big institutional finance. And they do it, the YOLO part of it is that they have a very shughali mindset. Shughal mele se karte hain, through memes. On places like Reddit, they get together and they say, to hell with this, to hell with that, and let's do what we want. And if you win, you share the story of your victory. And if you lose, you share your losses, and people laugh, not at you, but laugh with you. There's a community spirit. So this is a movement, as you had just mentioned, within capitalism, where people are banding together in large number, in the millions. And when you have people in the millions, their capital tends to be in the billions. Suddenly they become a force themselves. And they can do it just to stick it to the man, just to give danda to the powerful, or they can do it also with the logic of actually making money in the process. They actually have the same ultimate goal as capitalist monopolies do, which is to take a nice slice of the pie. They do want to get rich. Their operating system is still very much पैसा कमाना है जी, वैसे इनकी तबाही कर दें, वैसे जो भी होना है वो तो शुगल में हमने किया है, लेकिन हमने भी पैसा बनाना है in the meantime. That is very interesting. It is within the same scripture of capitalism that they have played by the rules to defeat the Brahmins of capitalism, which is those big banks.
Big banks, and we are talking about America right now.
We are actually talking about the West first and foremost, because the interlinkages between the U.S. financial system and the rest of the West is very intimate. Recently, 3 banks in the United States collapsed. Silvergate, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, a third one, and then चौथा भी एक खराब हो गया, Credit Suisse in Switzerland, having, just because they're so interconnected, Switzerland having एक गिर गया, and now एक डर है कि शायद Germany में भी एक हो जाए ये वो. But the relationship then, if you take it a step further, between the rest of the world and Western capitalism is also very tightly knit. Because the mode in which we trade is the US dollar, by and large, or the financial assets that we try to acquire are ones whose price, whose value, whatever, is determined by the same forces which happen to be in the West. So ये एक बड़ा scene है कि it's not just an American phenomena. You can say it's a Western phenomena, but then you can also say it's a world phenomena, and YOLO capitalism's agents are found all around the world.
Acha.
You can see these...
Not only in the West.
Not just in the West, for example, in Southeast Asia, in the Far East, China, everywhere you see the signs of it happening. It's just that it was a particular phenomena where YOLO capitalism's big crux, the GameStop short squeeze, happened to be in the United States. But retail investing is popular, I would say, everywhere in the world now. Just about everywhere. Yani there's apps for which you can trade the stock market. Those are available just about everywhere now. Anywhere that there are markets, anywhere that there are banks, anywhere that there's a financial system, you can do that.
तो इसकी क्या implications रही हैं for US financial markets? लेकिन इससे पहले ये स्टेज शुरू कब होती है चैलेंज वाली?
चैलेंज वाली हो तो
ये
बड़े अरसे से रही है जी.
नोटिसेबल कब हुई होगी?
The one that we are looking at that inspired this book and the
आफ्टर
idea,
2008 recession, I suppose.
basically. But even then, it was still people were too young. The people who were doing this stuff, they were kids back then. This is 15 years ago. The real stuff happened in 2021, the COVID pandemic. There are certain features, if you recall, of the pandemic. One is that you're locked in your home.
Yes.
The other one is that you're actually not going around consuming too much. You're just kind of sitting around, you have surplus savings. If you had savings, you're just sitting on them. The third is you were more digitally operative, using apps, sitting around Zoom, etc. So these factors actually lead you. You have a bit of money, you don't know what to do with it. Scene bada chal raha hai. You're following the news. You want to do something with it. That's when you start to do this stuff. And a lot of people started to spend time online on places like Reddit. Reddit has a subreddit called Wall Street Bets. Wall Street Bets is a place where they would go and they would make jokes and they would have fun, but they would also get very reasonable financial advice. Some people, regular people, presented their analysis logically. लोगों ने पढ़ के कहा, oh my god, that makes perfect sense.
अच्छा, what is unique about Reddit?
It is very
As a community.
democratic. That's what's
अच्छा, एक
unique.
Quora है, वो शायद इतना नहीं है.
Quora is just सवाल जवाब.
हाँ हाँ.
It doesn't have the same interactivity.
Reddit में discussion ज़्यादा है.
Yes, and topics भी बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. Quora से बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. Quora just cannot compete with that. And Facebook वगैरह cannot compete with it either because these are monopolies. The algorithm will determine what goes up and down.
बिल्कुल,
Reddit
बिल्कुल.
doesn't have that. Reddit has very much you upvote or downvote, and that determines what matters. People do that. But in Facebook, there is a lot of masking and manipulation. And I'm not making this accusation out of thin air. There have been congressional testimonies जिनसे पता लगा है कि Facebook बदमाशी बड़ी करता है. Twitter भी बदमाशी बड़ी करता है. What it shows to people, what it doesn't. It has had political impact. It has had economic impact. Reddit is different because upvote and downvote basically determines. And that's why things that are popular on Wall Street Bets inside Reddit are things that deserve to be popular.
सही है.
ये बड़ा फर्क है.
अच्छा, this deserves to be explored. Reddit. मैंने notice किया कि people do not use it much in, at least मेरे circle में तो मैंने नहीं सुना कभी. Not here.
The nerdier you are, the more likely you are to use Reddit. ये एक असूल है.
सही है.
You know, but you know where the original content of the internet really comes? The real garbage stuff comes out of a place called 4chan. वो बहुत ही वाहियात है. It's a terrible place. 4chan, number 4, CHAN.
ठीक है.
It's a hellhole. Don't go there. I'm telling your listeners, don't go to 4chan.
सही है.
And what is interesting out of 4chan, whatever content, it goes to Reddit. Then it competes in the democratic marketplace of ideas. Plus, original content is also created on Reddit. From that, then you're likely to see it on your Twitter and your Facebook. So if you want the best balance between originality and decency, Reddit is the place to go.
The question, next question was कि इसकी अभी तक क्या implications रही हैं for US financial markets. लेकिन इससे पहले एक और क्वेश्चन याद आ गया कि we need to go back to 2008 financial crisis. US में आया और क्योंकि इकोनॉमी, ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी बहुत ज़्यादा इंटरकनेक्टेड है, इसलिए पूरी दुनिया में स्प्रेड किया. और as far as I remember, it started with the house mortgage something. 2, 3, 4 factors were involved. तो what was the 2008 फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस? क्योंकि हम कैपिटलिज्म को समझ रहे हैं और ये उसकी एक एग्जांपल है. बूम एंड बस्ट. इट वाज अ ह्यूज बस्ट फॉर द ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी.
True. You know, I was actually in the financial markets. I was dealing with equities at that time. It was very early in my career, but I saw it firsthand. I'd actually interned in 2007 and started my career in April 2008. This Lehman Brothers collapse happened in September. यानी कि 6 महीने अपना नया नया करियर शुरू किया यूनिवर्सिटी से निकल के ताज़ा जहन के साथ, और एकदम भाई क्या हो रहा है, एकदम से तबाही हो गई. So there's a very personal context for me in the 2008 financial crisis. The root of it is a big asset. The big asset that you always consider important in your life is a home.
सही है.
But people in a market system have different levels of affordability. Some people can purchase houses, some people cannot. The idea behind making everybody able to afford a house is in the American dream. ये इनका एक बड़ा मंत्र है. There's a mantra called the American dream that my final aspiration is to own a plot of my own. So there were some politicians, particularly Bill Clinton, in the mid-90s. He put in laws कि जी हर बंदे को घर दे देना है. Everybody should be able to afford a home. And you have to create the policies to make that happen. But the truth is, there are all kinds of people in society. Some are stable people, some are unstable people. And you're saying कि जी unstable बंदे को भी, जिसकी गैर मुस्तकम सोच भी है, गैर मुस्तकम हालात भी हैं, उसको भी एक घर पकड़ा दो. I can't pay for it. So what did they do? They issued mortgages, which is a loan on the house. And this loan on the house means that you can borrow and then don't worry about the interest rate. Interest rates will be low. Policies are created to facilitate you. Ye wo. But the truth is, when there's enough unstable people who have been put into these loans, you will have a problem. The problem was that the bankers wanted to create more money out of money. The Marxist prediction was that late stage capitalism will have not money pursuing material things. It'll just be money created out of money created out of money, a cycle. The last stage is just that. It becomes so monstrous, the system.
बिल्कुल ऐसे है.
This is what was happening with these banks. Taking the crappy guys, girls' mortgage, mixing it up in a basket with the good mortgages. If you mix all these colors up, जो आपकी खिचड़ी बनती है, the khichdi looks okay. You'll say, oh, generally people will be able to pay for this. So you buy this as an asset, as an investment, and then you can repackage and resell. So you were basically doing a lot of khichdi pakaying. The banks were doing khichdi banaying with the mortgage qualities. They were mixing up, they were jumbling up crappy mortgages for people who won't be able to pay. They will default at some point because they don't even have jobs. And even in the good times, they can't have stable jobs. यानी ये बिल्कुल ही गए गुजरे लोग हैं जो कि हर मुआशरे में होते हैं. With pristine, middle class, stable, nice, intelligent people, and sabka mix karke, that means that you can't see the poison in it, the poisoned mortgage, the toxic assets. So what happened was a chain of default started to happen. Then people, because it's a khichdi, you don't know which dana in the khichdi is the poison, so you think the whole thing is toxic. And the whole thing to you is worthless, you're not going to eat the khichdi. So everybody started throwing this off their books. I don't want any of this crap khichdi. And so all of it came down at the same time that in real life people are starting to default. मतलब इस बंदे ने पिछले 20 साल में नौकरी नहीं की और इसने मायामी में एक बंगला ले लिया है जिसको वो अब संभाल भी नहीं सक रहा. That kind of person. That created a systemic chain where ta karke everything seemed poisoned. People were selling everything off and everything seemed worthless. But what does the government do? The government in the United States had a unique opportunity to fix things. This is a focusing event. Now we are going to restrain how capitalism works like they did in the 1930s. The track record of the US in fixing its things is very good. In the 1930s, Great Depression, they created a new system out of it. So that by the 1960s, America was a very prosperous, very balanced middle-class society. So they thought they would do it again, but no. Now the elites were too corrupt in America. And they said, just give some morphine to the system. Inko nasha pila do. That nasha is extra stimulus. Give the banks money and pour as much as you can ताकि लोग को ठंड हो जाए. मतलब खिचड़ी जहर वाली खा ली है तो थोड़ी सी मॉर्फिन ले लो. ये नहीं कि सिस्टम में से जहर निकालो. नहीं, वो जहर था अंदर. The poison is still there. In 2008, what happened because of that is the people in general who suffered when the system collapsed or was paralyzed for a time, they didn't get anything. Only the banks enjoyed this morphine, this nasha. And they didn't get any punishment for doing this kind of badmashi at all. Virtually nobody who should have gone to jail went to jail. In other countries like Iceland, all of the major bankers who were involved in this kind of stuff were put in prison because it's a criminal thing. It destroys lives. America mein kuch nahi hua. So the same badmashis kept doing their own stuff. And they had all this morphine in the system that they said, it's fine, we've solved the problem. But they didn't solve the problem. That's what 2008 led to. If the pandemic didn't happen in 2020, this nasha could have probably continued in an autopilot. But they had received so much praise, they had been patting themselves on the back for so long, since 2008 down to 2019, that they said, now what do? we are going to put even more morphine into the system. क्योंकि अब हमें आता ही यही है. We're not going to deal with the corruption, the inequality, the lack of investment in infrastructure, in education, none of the major things that make a society. I don't care about that. Just put more morphine into the system to keep it going. So what happened was that the stock market was going up. But the real economy during pandemic थी ही नहीं. Nobody was doing anything. सब कुछ बैठा हुआ था real economy. इस rise में फिर वो YOLO capitalism वालों ने कहा कि हम भी थोड़ी सी अपनी game डालते हैं. So in 2020, you had even more morphine put into the system. And after the pandemic receded, the Fed said, okay, now things are starting. We've put a lot of morphine into the system. Nasha pila diya hai. There's going to be some inflation because things are coming back to life. But this was a lie. This was stupidity also. They forgot कि इन्होंने सारा नशा पिलाया हुआ है. उस नशे के after effects क्या होंगे? That is what inflation has been since 2021. They didn't look at it. They mistimed it. They thought, let's just let the system get back into gear and things will be fine. But it hasn't. So because the inflation was systemic, it was in everything, plus there's things like a war and so on happening, they have had to do the opposite. अब वो खींच रहे हैं रगों में से system के वो सारा नशा.
They means broader capitalists and government.
The government and but specifically
policymakers.
Correct. So Congress and all, but the key agent is the U.S. Fed in all of this. The morphine deliverer, the medicine man, was the U.S. Fed. And it's the guy, it's the entity that is also retracting the morphine from the system now. That's why you have interest rates go up to 6% from zero. Nothing is making sense. Banks are collapsing because they continued for 15 years in this autopilot on nasha. And now they realize that things have changed, but their balance sheet hasn't caught up. Countries used to think that the dollars are quite an easy thing to get because so many dollars are in the world system. Suddenly the dollars disappeared. In a country like Egypt, in 2022, April, ek hafte mein, in 1 week, 20 billion left the country. The same happened here. Pakistan had $21 billion of reserves in late 2021, like let's say September 2021. But now it's down to 3 billion, and it's been in this kind of very dicey place. Many countries are like this because the dollars which were easy to get, nasha was everywhere. वो सस्ता नशा करते रही है सारी दुनिया. अब वो नशा कहीं मिलता नहीं है और अब वो भूख और प्यास और वो इफलास हर जगह नजर आ रही है. This is how capitalism has been dealt with. And YOLO capitalism is regular people trying to deal with this whole problem. एक तो government level पे चीज़ें और सरकारों को भी नहीं समझ आ रहा क्या करें. एक है जी इनफरादी तौर पे हम तुम और मैं कहें कि यार हम भी कुछ करते हैं इसमें. अगर यही सिस्टम है, अगर बस इतने ऐहो ही काम है तो फिर हम भी we'll do something like that.
ठीक है. YOLO capitalism के participants की जो approach है और जो capitalists की approach है उसमें ethical फ़र्क क्या है? क्योंकि they are doing the same thing. How is it so revolutionary?
The revolution is in the rhetoric. The human nature is the same. Whether you follow one path or the other, there is greed. There is a one-upmanship that is inherent in human beings. If your padosi has a nice thing, you want it too. In fact, sometimes you will try to undercut your padosi to have something better. This is human nature. Kameenghi hai, ghalazat hai. Especially as populations grow, there's more competition for things. Sometimes it's easier to take a negative approach to life than a positive approach. यानी कि हम मिल के काम करें तो कुछ बेहतर होगा, लेकिन कभी-कभी आसान होता है कि मैं उसकी जड़ मार दूं. That's something. But YOLO capitalism and traditional capitalism are different at the rhetoric level. Capitalism has a lot of nice sounding things. For one thing is that capitalism is closely associated in rhetoric with democracy, although it's not. Capitalism is anti-democratic because it pushes the wealth to the top. But it says that capitalism and freedom was hara kar kurke, and rational expectations and people wearing nice suits, the mature people are dealing with the system, so the best people come to the top. So what I'm saying is that they mix a lot of concepts like democracy, meritocracy and all that to basically couch the language around a system that is exploitative. YOLO capitalism doesn't have any of this rhetoric. YOLO capitalism rhetoric is, to hell with these people. Let's have some fun. Let's go to the moon. Don't give up. We stick together. The apes together strong. It's a totally different mindset. There's something evil out there, and if we stick together, we can bring it down. Capitalism says there's no evil. We are the good guys. This system is the best possible system. It's the end of history. What Francis Fukuyama said in the 90s about end of history, you can even call such people Fukuyamists. These are Fukuyami's. All you can do is really tinker around the system. That's all you got to do. But this is as good as human civilization can get. It basically paralyzes human progress at stage 2. इससे बेहतर कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता. You know, the kings used to paralyze the system at stage 1. कि feudalism से तो बेहतर है ही नहीं. This is a divine right. ये तो अल्लाह की देन है. इसलिए मैं सबकी माँ बहन करता रहता हूँ because मुझे सब everybody who is enjoying the current system will try to paralyze progress at that system. So there's a difference in rhetoric between YOLO capitalists, that there's something evil, and capitalists in general, the mainstream traditional capitalists say this is the best thing, just fix it a little bit here and there, but you're not going to get anything better than this because this is the best human beings can do. ये फर्क है.
And there is a story as well, na? Did we cover that? Reddit तो हो गया, लेकिन there is Robinhood, there is the app. Should we go into its detail?
It's quite enjoyable. At least people in general who are not familiar with this story consider it to be an interesting story. In the depression of mental depression of 2020, 2021, people started to spend time on Reddit, Wall Street bets for their financial interests, and some people, including this guy whose name, I cannot say his initial name, but his second name on Reddit was Roaring Kitty. His formal name is Keith Gill. He studied a company called GameStop. GameStop, yahan pe nahi hai, but in America, it's where, when we were kids, we would go to buy Nintendo, Sega, वगैरह, all those games. So we have nice memories of GameStop in North America and Europe. And he says, look at what is happening with this stock right now. Wall Street wants to crush it so badly that they are going to short it more than 120%. This means not only am I selling stock that I own, you know, you can still, if you own a stock, you can sell it or you can buy it. But there's another thing you can do in modern day capitalism. I don't have to sell stock I own. I can also take stock from you and sell it. I'll sell it. And then I'll buy it cheaper jab gir jaye and give it back to you. I make that profit. Short selling. So Wall Street had taken all possible stock, theoretically possible, and then some, and shorted it. यानी कि इसने गिरना है और ऐसे वैसे वावा करके गिरना है कि कोई हद नहीं. But he studied GameStop carefully and said, this company has a lot of cash. People are exaggerating the online adoption. People still enjoy going to stores. And once the pandemic goes, people will do there. They have new executive management. They have all of these interesting things that they're working on. So now GameStop is being exaggerated. Why don't we all just buy this? And what will we do in the process? We will destroy these hedge funds which own such an excess amount of it. People said, they studied the finance and they said, this is a very logical argument. And you know what? I like GameStop. And you know what? I really hate Wall Street. So they all banded together and all they did was buy, which is a very traditional thing to do. You buy the stock. And they did it on their app sitting at home. Some put in $100, some $500, some $10,000. Basically, the stock went from, I don't know, $10 का कुछ था होगा, $10 से लेके 500 तक चला गया. In theory, a stock has a lower bound of 0.
बढ़ गया, simply.
0 से कम हो नहीं सकती ना stock की price. लेकिन अगर आप चाहें और खरीदते रहें तो उसकी कभी रुकती नहीं है. It can keep rising. That's the graph. The opposite of that is short selling. Maximum you will gain is when the stock goes to 0. That gap is your maximum profit from short selling. But your losses can be infinite. जितनी वो चढ़ती जाएगी stock उतने का आपको नुकसान है. So in theory, the hedge fund could have had infinite losses. Ultimately, this mechanism of them buying, if prices can be upwards infinite, short selling loss can be downward infinite. $70 billion का नुकसान हो गया to Wall Street by young people. टिक टिक करके इस पे उन्होंने
पे. और ये कितने लोग हो सकते हैं अंदाजन?
20 लाख.
ठीक है.
बड़ी बात है. 20-25 लाख. 2 million, 3 million people with varying amounts of participation from $10 up to $10,000, some $50,000. और फिर रज के कमाया भी है, especially the early ones. एक बंदे ने $10,000 उसको कोई $5 लाख मुनाफा हुआ उस पे. The very early ones. But the thing was, उसके बाद फिर Wall Street भी it got in on the game. Some hedge funds said, यार ये वैसे अच्छा मौका है कि मैं अपने competition को भी तबाह कर दूं. And they put money with these little guys so that they destroy the competition.
That's interesting.
फिर propaganda भी शुरू हो गया. oh, you guys are all going to sell, so I need to get out first. But these people were saying, don't give up diamond hands. No paper hands. This is their. Don't be a loser with the paper hands. You got to have the diamond hand. Hold.
सही है.
Hold till the last minute. And the price did ye wo upar niche hua. And then something happened. The app itself, they are corrupt. Robinhood. Robinhood is corrupt. Robinhood lets you trade for free. Zero commissions. But how do they make money? They sell the data of the users to Wall Street. तो वॉल स्ट्रीट क्या करता है उसके साथ पहले ही अपना तमाशा कर लेता है. इट मेक्स मोर मनी और बाद में ये लूजर्स आम अवामी लोग बाद में इनको ट्रेड मिलता है तो वॉल स्ट्रीट अपना पैसा बनाया हुआ आता है, डेटा मिलता है.
सही है.
तो रॉबिनहुड ने क्या किया, उन्होंने कहा हाँ जब ये बहुत चढ़ रहा था कि अब आप इसको ख़रीद नहीं सकते, अब आप इसको सिर्फ बेच सकते हैं अगर चाहें तो. सो दे द गेट कीपर इटसेल्फ बिकेम क्रोकेड. वो भी मिल गया इनके साथ.
ठीक है.
ये भी बड़ा सीन हो गया. So finally, Congress was a little bit panicked by all of this because there was too much tumult. There was almost rioting at one point. But when Congress brought it in, Congress was sympathetic to, whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, you're sympathetic to the little guy. The Democrats said, look how crooked capitalism has become. You have to protect these people. The Republicans also said you have to protect these people because capitalism wasn't supposed to be this. It has to help the ordinary American. So they went all in against the big major hedge funds, major institutions like Citadel, which is one of the big hedge funds that does this badmashi, as well as Robinhood. Unka bhi banda bula liya ki tu kya badmashiyan kar raha hai. And ultimately it was decided that this system cannot continue as it is. Retail investors require protections, financial regulation, ye wo, aur phir wo bureaucracy mein chali gayi baat. In the meantime, Wall Street Bets today is still very active. एंड आजकल तो खबर यूं करके फैलती है सोशल मीडिया पे, ये जो बैंकिंग कोलैप्स हुआ है अभी 3 banks falling in the United States, it is because social media पे पैनिक फैल गया. Actually these banks did have deposits, they didn't need to collapse, but चूंकि एक तहलका मचा दिया गया.
It's all about perceptions.
It's all about perceptions.
That translates into actions.
Perception is everything these days because it's at lightning speed. The banks, the big hedge funds also were not ready for these guys. At lightning speed, everybody says, chalo, tick, I'm going to buy this. Tick, I'm going to... And the funny thing is, ek to GameStop ho gaya na ji. Makes sense financially. Baki stocks kya hai? Bed Bath and Beyond. Just because they wanted to. Achha, ek aur hai BlackBerry. Remember BlackBerry bachpan mein? It has no future. But so many companies were short on this. कि these guys said चलो इनको भी अब टीका लगा दो. BlackBerry has no future, फिर भी वो चले गए.
सही है.
यही मजे की बात है कि अब इसमें एक शुगली भी है. शुगल भी मिजाज में पाई जाती है.
Without any substantial risk. बहुत से लोग इकट्ठे होके तंग कर रहे हैं.
Exactly.
और फाइनेंशियल नुकसान पहुंचा रहे हैं बड़े प्लेयर्स को.
और खुद भी कुछ कमा रहे हैं.
खुद भी कमा रहे हैं. It's a good hobby.
It is a good hobby. And it requires us all to band together. But which stock is next? I don't know. You have to present some good arguments now. Yeah, but you're so charismatic, you say, you know what? Here's where Wall Street, this is their Achilles heel. इसको अब तोड़ सकते हैं हम.
एक लीडर आ जाए सब में से और वो शुरू कर दे. We have got a good idea कि YOLO capitalism क्या है, capitalism क्या है, YOLO capitalism क्या है, what is the story, क्या US की फाइनेंशियल मार्केट्स को नुकसान पहुंचा, इम्पैक्ट हुआ या नुकसान पहुंचा. चेंजेस क्या है यूएस की फाइनेंशियल मार्केट्स में आफ्टर दिस एपिसोड्स? लेजिस्लेटिव चेंजेस, रेगुलेटरी चेंजेस.
There have been, again, capitalism's logic is the Fukuyamists say you tinker around the edges. So they've only tinkered around the edges. Wall Street is still at the center. But Wall Street is having a very hard time. With the Fed's monetary contraction, cryptocurrencies गिर गई हैं, stock market गिर गई है. There simply isn't enough money sloshing around. And so right now, most of the disruptions that I would have predicted do not apply because the same monetary environment doesn't apply. So, आगे क्या होता है ये देखना पड़ेगा. But basically, the world's economic situation is in a very bad shape because there isn't enough sasta nasha, cheap dollars to go around. That's one reason why even if you do regulation, you don't do regulation, doesn't really matter right now. Because with these banks that have collapsed, people are saying you should have tougher oversight in this, that, but you can't have tougher oversight. एक हद होती है ना, या तो फिर regulation इतनी ज़्यादा हो कि banks काम ही ना कर सकते, सांस ही ना लें. But I'll give you a more specific example of regulation that's interesting. One of the chapters in this book is written by Nizan Geslevich Peck, and she's a professor in New York. And she looked at the dangers of YOLO capitalism in the specific sense that इस जो apps पे खेल रहे हैं, it has a very game-like, शुगली मिजाज. Maybe you and I as grown-ups, as adults, semi-adults.
नहीं, विल कम टू दैट के एप्स आजकल बहुत यूज़ हो रही हैं यहाँ पे भी, और हर कोई यूज़ कर रहा है. स्टॉक है, इसमें पैसा डालो, बनेगा, ये होगा, वो होगा.
बेशक, लेकिन आप और मैं अगर करें हमारी उम्र में तो एक बात है, अगर 7 साल का बच्चा कर रहा हो जिसके लिए ये टॉम एंड जेरी चीज़ है, फिर क्या होगा? Her chapter is about gamification of this stuff and the impact on children.
Gamification, right.
So you make it like a game. It's one thing when you're 20, it's another when you're 7 years old.
ठीक है.
So she said that this is a very terrible thing because बच्चों के दिमाग खराब कर दिए जा रहे हैं. For them, dollars are like monopoly money. It's all made up, which it is. But the fact is that kids really see it all as a cartoon.
Advertisements आती हैं ना कि trading करें, और I was recently seeing a very funny advertisement. मैं तो वी नो कि क्या पर्पस होता है, क्या सीन है. हेलो जी, मेरी ये गाड़ी है, ये मैंने ट्रेडिंग से करवाई. बड़ी फनी सी थी वो एडवर्टाइजमेंट एक. इट वाज प्योर नॉनसेंस.
Now, what she's arguing for is protection, child protection from this stuff. Adults make mistakes, but kids are really terrible. So that's an example of regulation that is emerging. Thanks to the work done in this book, because she subsequently published in the most prestigious journal Nature. So you take the ideas of this book and you take them one step further. मैं तो सिर्फ एक मिसाल दे रहा हूँ इस किताब से कि बच्चों को बचा के रखो. उनके तो लिए तो जो पता नहीं डोटा में जो कॉइन्स होते हैं और डॉलर्स होते हैं, एक ही बात है.
एक ही है.
That's the problem. और बच्चे ने कभी कमाया नहीं होता, नौकरी नहीं की होती. That's also a big thing. No, you have earned money, so you're a little bit more sensitive about it. YOLO disrupts that, but you still can have a bigger agenda. Like, I don't like capitalism, so I'm going to stick it to the power agents. Kids don't have any such concepts. You have to protect them from this stuff.
Then a bit of a philosophical side of YOLO capitalism. The first question regarding that is that we discussed it prior to our discussion. Are there any inherent contradictions between YOLO capitalism and traditional ideas of capitalism, such as the Protestant work ethic or the idea of deferred gratification? मतलब ये कि अगर कोई YOLO capitalism का सब्सक्राइबर सॉर्ट ऑफ बन रहा है, तो क्या वो प्रोटेस्टेंट वर्क एथिक्स या सिंपल ज़बान में वर्क एथिक्स कि जी थिंग्स टेक टाइम, द फाउंडेशंस नीड टू बी स्ट्रॉन्ग, there has to be effort, long-term effort put into something in order for it to be sustainable. इसमें एक contradiction है, और क्या जो लोग इसको सब्सक्राइब कर रहे हैं YOLO कैपिटलिज्म को, क्या वो इन वैल्यूज़ को अंडरमाइन कर रहे हैं? बट हम ये भी कह सकते हैं कि क्या ये वैल्यूज़ वैल्यूएबल भी हैं या नहीं है, ये भी हो सकता है.
बड़ा ज़बरदस्त सवाल है. We'll touch on the Protestant work ethic, and we'll touch on the deferred gratification. The third one was about the general rhetoric, which we have addressed. Okay, there's a difference between YOLO capitalism and capitalism in the rhetoric. वो cover हो गया. The second one then is Protestant work ethic. America was built on a Protestant work ethic that came from Germany. The idea that Catholic mindset was very different. Basically, you just live through life, you don't really work hard, and the Pope decides everything. Protestants were fed up with this. They said, you have to earn. Sawab bhi kamana hai, rozi bhi kamani hai, jaan marni hai. So it was a very big push in Europe, and it drove the Industrial Revolution, and it brought in capitalism. In America, it was worshipped. That to get rich is a kind of devotion. अच्छी बात है, ये आपने हलाल की अगर रोज़ी कमाई है, जान मारी है, तो सवाब भी इससे मिलेगा.
और ये भी है उसके अंदर कि it is an indication of how much God is happy with us. जितना हम materially prosper करेंगे दुनिया में, ये उनकी एक concept बन गया था.
Exactly.
They started to work on it.
Precisely, and in a positive way. Because Catholic भी कहता था ये तो अल्लाह की देन है. यहाँ भी जो लोग बदमाशियाँ कर रहे हैं कहते हैं अल्लाह की देन है. डाका मार के हज पे जाते हैं.
ऐसे.
So the Musliman of South Asia is very much like the old Catholics. It's terrible. But the Protestant work ethic, let's say in its glory days, as Max Weber is the guy behind this, who put this all in the 1920s. And he's a big name in my field, public administration. because he talked about how bureaucracy should work as well. So these are very closely linked ideas that bureaucracy should be facilitating hardworking people to do stuff. ये सारा मिला जुला हुआ है. So the Protestant work ethic made good sense as long as you saw the rewards of that hard work. But here's the problem. In America today, आप जितनी भी जान मारें, and the American worker, even statistically, is very hardworking. They have very decent work ethic. They're honest people in general. बहुत अच्छा system है अमेरिका का, ordinary people. But at the top, the corruption is so big now that the honest person cannot make a living. So at some point, the whole myth breaks down. So YOLO Capitalism says, look, झूठ बोल रहे थे, myth has broken down. इन्होंने तो हमारे लिए कुछ नहीं करना, अब हम खुद मिलके करेंगे. That's the fundamental difference between YOLO capitalism and traditional capitalism, is that traditional capitalism still promotes the lie that if you work hard enough, you will rise up in life. It has become a lie because of corruption, but it was true at one point. At least for a able-bodied white American in the 1960s, it was true that at 25 he could buy a house.
अभी इसलिए लाए है क्योंकि सिस्टम अलाउ ही नहीं करता है ना.
नहीं करता. But there was a time where they had made it true. Now they have made it false. So now YOLO capitalism then says, look, I told you, they are full of lies. Instead, we have to do things for ourselves. And in the process, if we can expose their lie, all the better. ये है on the Protestant work ethic. दूसरा था on deferred gratification, which it ties into Protestantism, because Protestantism implied a lot of self-sacrifice. कि सवाब मिलेगा, हलाल की कमाई है, अच्छी बात है, बस लगे रहो. आगे का भी देखो, अगले जहां का भी देखो. But YOLO says कि अगले जहां शाह मैनू कुछ नहीं पता.
कल कितने वेखे
इन लोगों की बदमाशी चल रही है. YOLO is literally the antithesis of deferred gratification. I ain't going to defer no gratification. वैसे मैंने कख नहीं दिया. So you haven't given me anything at all. I am going to get it, and I'm going to get it now. In fact, we are going to get it now, and we're going to get it from them. So in both of these key American concepts that you've identified, YOLO capitalism offers the antithesis, because it exposes the lie, because these things have been converted into a lie. The Protestant work ethic may still be true at a personal level in America, but यानी कि लोग बहुत मेहनती हैं और शरीफ हैं. The ordinary American is very, very productive. Productivity per hour is huge. It's probably the best in the world. If not Japan, then it's America. But at the same time, they're not getting the reward. The problem in America now, and it's true for the West, and it's always been true here, always been since 1947, that there is a big class of working poor. लोग लगे हुए हैं, काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन फिर भी उनका हिसाब सही नहीं हो रहा. In America,
that is the problem with capitalism.
It is, especially when you have monopolistic late-stage capitalism. The return has to go to the top, it's not coming to you. So the lie has been exposed. And that's why YOLO capitalism is the antithesis.
So, can the participants of this approach balance the need कि immediate gratification या deferred gratification में इसको balance किया जा सकता है, या फिर there is all in अभी चाहिए क्योंकि we are not going to get anything later?
It's a very deep question, because it goes to the social context. आजकल का ज़माना, and actually I would like your comment on this, social media का ज़माना है. क्या social media के ज़माने में, influencers के ज़माने में लोग डिफर कर सकते हैं?
नहीं कर सकते, बिल्कुल भी नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं.
तो इसकी क्या वजह है?
They want everything now because they think that these people are getting everything now in their lives. I want this life which the Instagram blogger is showing to me. और बल्कि a few days ago I was with some colleagues of mine. यार ये तो I sensed they are very unhappy ना. So they began to discuss the Instagram stuff. मैंने कहा Instagram की एक unhappy होने की एक रेसिपी है, open Instagram और any other social media platform, और उसके ऊपर lifestyle bloggers को आप देख लें, उनका कोई भी पेज खोलें और उसको 5 मिनट के लिए आप स्क्रॉल कर लें. After 5 minutes you will feel कि I am the worst and most nalike person on this planet. So वो होता है कि जी I am not doing enough. These people are doing enough. So I need to work on this, and I need everything now.
Precisely. And do you believe, based on this conversation, that YOLO capitalism offers a good narrative कि यार भाड़ में जाए, ये तो सारा धोखा है? What do you think?
Yes, it does, I suppose. Because it is acting ना उस system के against, but rallying together.
यही एक तरीका है. Can you really have an influencer's life on your own? Can you earn that in your तनख्वाह, those private jets and those bikinis और क्या क्या है उसमें?
Not in तनख्वाह.
बस. मैं आपको एक ग्राफ दिखाता हूँ, बताता हूँ. I saw this literally 2 days ago. How long, Allah Hafidh, how long would it take for you to earn $1 million based on the average tankhah of your country? The highest, yani the shortest period is...
ये हम ऐड कर देंगे during this video में. Share करके.
It's good for if they look at this as we speak. The shortest is Switzerland. Okay, it would take 14-15 years. Huh? You can earn $1 million because tankhaahein bahut hain wahan pe. Lekin the cost of living is very high in Zurich and Bern and all. So it's actually not a lot of money. In America, maybe it'll take 20 to 25 years of the average salary. So it is possible to have the Protestant work ethic still. You can still become a millionaire. It's just that being a millionaire isn't such a big deal. On American Instagram, I mean, what can you get in Los Angeles, in Santa Barbara, Maui, whatever, with $1 million? It's just not enough money. अच्छा जी, नीचे जाएं, फिर आता है जी ग्वाटेमाला, फिर केन्या आता है, फिर ये आता है. ब्राज़ील में जी 200 साल लग जाएंगे.
अच्छा.
200 साल के बाद आपको $1 million on the average salary मिल जाएगा. At the very bottom is Pakistan, जहां आपको 600 साल लग जाएंगे तनख्वाह, हलाल की कमाई तनख्वाह से making $1 million. आप तनख्वाह के साथ तो आपका बस ही नहीं चलता. The argument you can give me there is that, well, you don't need $1 million. $1 million will be 30 crore rupees.
In Pakistan.
Yes, with my tankhah, it might take 600 saal to get 30. Well, average salary. For us, it's obviously less. But the average person out there with the whatever crap salary, which is the average is very low, right? So most of the values are at the lower end, or you have extreme values of
The
tankhah.
minimum wage is around 22. ऐसे ही है. लेकिन वो implement तो होती नहीं है. वो हो जाए तो वो भी बहुत ज़्यादा है.
That's the minimum. Let's say the average is a little bit higher because they're extreme values. लोग 4 लाख की 10 लाख की भी कमाते हैं महाना. So let's say it's 40,000 rupees is the average salary. So उस पे yes 600 साल तो लग ही जाएंगे, 500 साल तो लग ही जाएंगे. It's true. But the thing is, do you really need $1 million, which is 30 crore rupees? क्या आपका 30 crore के बगैर बस नहीं चलता? That's the thing. So you can live less simply, and that's basically the differential between currencies, between the cost of living, etc. Pakistan mein you can actually get by with much, much less, alhamdulillah. One reason is because we grow our own food.
Yes.
The second reason because our economy is virtually all functionally informal. I mean, all the studies say informal economy is only 30% of Pakistan's economy. Technically, because the high value stuff is in a formal economy. यानी कि mobiles वगैरह ये वो गाड़ियाँ ये वो, but functionally, most people reside within this 30%. And so that's why things won't ever cost too much. Or you don't need 30 crore rupees to survive. In fact, it would be a really big deal if you did. So that's it. But मैं इसलिए पूछ रहा हूँ ये, because तनख्वाह के साथ क्या Instagram की life हासिल की जा सकती है? What do you think? Instagram कुछ आपको गलत बता रहा है ना? It depresses you in the process.
Yes.
ना?
Yes.
And when you're sitting in a lockdown and you're depressed और पैसे वैसे जो हैं पड़े हुए इनके साथ कुछ किया भी नहीं जा सकता, wouldn't it be a nice idea to go invest online?
बिल्कुल. It would naturally incentivize us to go over there. ऐसे ही है.
I would say so.
और फिर उसके फ़ौरन बाद if you scroll from Instagram to YouTube, you keep getting these ads. Online trading, online trading, online trading. And that is where people go towards this thing.
From what you're saying, I want to ask another question. The disaffection, the dil tod diya hai system ne, in your circle of friends and you, do you not feel that there's something wrong with the system?
With the system, yes. So अगर हम वो hunting gathering में चले जाएं, तो we can make we can think, perceives that era कि यार human beings are ठीक है, the various differences between their capabilities, लेकिन they are like essentially human beings. They deserve to live a minimally acceptable life जो उनके लिए हो, और वो नहीं मिल रही. At the same time, other people are filthy rich. और इसकी बहुत सारी एग्जांपल्स हैं which I would prefer not to mention. So this is creating a disaffection in the society, especially among youngsters who are in Pakistan. तो वो grow कर रहे हैं population growth. Around 70%, 65% population comprises of youth, a disaffected youth. At the same time, they move towards this insecurity के जो issues होते हैं, terrorism, etc. So yes, this is something wrong with the system. लेकिन in Pakistan, I suppose कि हो सकता है कैपिटलिज्म उतना ज़्यादा इनग्रेन ना हो क्योंकि यहाँ इनफॉर्मल इकोनॉमी चल रही है जितना कि वेस्टर्न, वहाँ पे तो और ज़्यादा फिर. So I suppose कि this YOLO capitalism was a natural organic response to this unfair system.
I think you're right. But here's the funny thing. This is where we bring it to our context a little bit. हमारे लोग अब सारे यंगस्टर्स बाहर जाना चाहते हैं क्योंकि यहाँ उनको सीन नहीं नज़र आता. Perfectly understandable. To make an honest living here, 600 साल लग जाएंगे to be a millionaire. But if you somehow move to America, you could earn it in 20 years. And then you bring that back here. And then you could have 30 crore rupees worth of,
वो 580 साल skip कर दिए हैं.
है कि नहीं? 580 साल की बचत हो गई ना. 580 साल बच गए मेरे. So that makes sense. But the truth, and I'm speaking this from experience and because it is my job to look at the world economy, it's also my training. बाहर भी दूध की नहरें नहीं
है.
बह रही. बाहर भी ज़िल्लत है, बंदा तज़ील होगा और वहाँ पे तो आपकी शनाख्त पे ही आपको वो आप पे हमला कर देंगे. यहाँ पे वो नहीं होता because we're all kind of the same. अक्सर लोग पूछते भी नहीं ये किधर से है क्या है, doesn't really matter. वहाँ पे you stand out like a sore thumb. In fact, they think that you are the problem. You're the reason, you damn immigrants coming here are the reason why I can't make a decent living.
Yes.
So I'm going to build that wall. हालांकि it's that. There was a great, मैं आपको बताऊं, protest sign in one of the protests related to GameStop and this short squeeze, YOLO capitalism. One woman had this protest sign and it says, the enemy doesn't come on boats, he comes in limousines. यानी कि ये boat problem और ये refugee problem, these are not the enemy. They're struggling like we are. The enemy comes in the limousine. और वो बड़ी अय्याशी कर रहा है, but he would be very happy if people, the working poor, just fight each other and hate each other because he's anyways living at a distance. I'm saying he because
Huge distance.
doesn't matter what these people say, and if they eat each other, that's just fine. So that the enemy doesn't come on a boat. The enemy come or on a donkey cart. The enemy comes on a limousine. बिल्कुल सही बात की है. So बाहर भी दूध की नहरें नहीं बहती. You go there, they will attack you. तज़लील भी होंगे. And it's not clear that you will rise up to the top there. बाहर भी धक्के खाने पड़ते हैं. And the promise that capitalism gave to these people or to other societies, socialism gave, is falling apart. It's very hard to think of a country out there where you could easily go and just set up and rock out, matlab hero ban ke ekdam, because the American dream has fallen apart. UK is falling apart. Europe is tearing at the seams. Even China's economy, the big driver of its economy was real estate, essentially. Manufacturing to hai hai for export. But the main wealth creation vehicle was real estate. They've just built cities out of nothing. But there are like 100 cities with more than 1 million people in all of China. It's so big. How did they erected all of that?
बिल्कुल.
They used more concrete in any 1 or 2 years than the United States used in the full century. 20th century से ज़्यादा एक सदी के बराबर अमेरिका की तामीराती काम के चाइना का 1 साल है या 4 साल है.
ऐसे ही है.
तो इतना जो खड़ा किया है, that bubble is now unfolding, unraveling. There simply isn't enough capital to get this system going. And if you want to learn more about this, check out a company called China Evergrande. They have been in a lot of distress. This is the biggest real estate developer. It would be like the whatever DHA Beria of China, construction guys. And they are in so much trouble right now because people cannot simply afford that. China had a particular problem with COVID too. You know, they opened way after the rest of us did. Very restrictive economic activity. So China is also not a promised land. Japan is getting too old. There's nobody to work. They have houses you can get for $30,000, gorgeous houses, but there's nobody to buy because they're all getting old and dying. Point being that the problem is everywhere. Look in our neighborhood, Bharat ki, if you look at the graph, maybe I'll share with you and you share it, but if you look at who has gained in Bharat whatever Shining India जो इनकी nonsense चलती है, it's basically the top 20%. The bottom 40% is actually poorer, and the bottom 20% is way poorer now than before. They're in a worse condition than before. और पहले भी इनकी क्या हालत थी. So the going to the top issue is happening everywhere, and people are struggling everywhere. So if you think you can leave for somewhere, there's not many places you can go. The best thing you can do is fix this country and enjoy life here. That is my argument to you, because this going to the top thing means that you won't enjoy life anywhere. It's hard. It's hard out there.
लेकिन ये भी हो सकता है कि बहुत से लोग जो बाहर के मुल्कों में जा रहे हैं, दे आर गेटिंग टेस्टिमनीज फ्रॉम पीपल हु आर लिविंग अब्रॉड एंड हैविंग अ रिलेटिवली बेटर लाइफ देन दे हैव बीन लिविंग इन पाकिस्तान.
Fantastic point. इसमें दो बातें. There's survivorship bias, and then there's the facade. Survivorship bias means कि जो वहाँ टैक्सियाँ चला रहा है, वो testimonials नहीं भेज रहा. वो बिस्ती होती है ना.
ठीक है, सही है.
Only the survivor, the one guy.
Certain आ रहे हैं बस, उसको सब लोग देख रहे हैं.
और उसमें ये भी बात है कि those real rock stars, for example, like you went to a good medical college in Pakistan. I'm just picking one, but like Aga Khan, and then you went to a nice American hospital. You're a star, but medical में क्या score आया था, that's not representative of the sample of. You're just very, very smart.
सही है.
And people are not like that, so they cannot live that life. फिर जो लॉटरियाँ आ गई और जिनकी मतलब मौज हो गई, they just were in the right place at the right time. Not everybody will be like that, लेकिन वो सबसे ज़्यादा टेस्टिमोनियल देते हैं. बाकी सारे जो धक्के खा रहे हैं, जो ये वो डिवोर्सेस में हो गए हैं, बच्चे उनसे बात नहीं करते, बच्चे गोरी से शादी कर. बाय द वे माय फियांसे इज आल्सो गोरी. बट वो जो है ना सारा सिस्टम उनका बदल गया है, वो टेस्टिमोनियल्स नहीं दे रहे. सो देयर इज अ सर्वाइवरशिप एंड अ सैम्पलिंग इशू problem. And the other thing is, this is actually predates social media. जब बंदा बाहर दुबई से या यूरोप से आता था अपने गांव में, अपने पिंड में, केपी पंजाब जहाँ भी, तो वो तोहफे शोफे लेके जाता था ताकि लोगों को ये ना लगे कि वो तजलील हो रहा है और अरबी ने उसने जान अजाब की हुई है और मार और कुट खाता है और थूकते हैं लोग उस पर. They would hide that, and they would come as a रईस आज़म to try to promote the myth. सो हमारे सोसाइटी, ऑल सोसाइटीज़, बट हमारे में ज़रा ज़्यादा ही ये धोखेबाजी बहुत होती है कि हमारे फ्रंट से फसाड्स प्यारे होंगे और अंदर से जो है वो अलग बात है.
ठीक है.
So these are the reasons why the testimonials are actually distorting the image that desperate young people have, because they need some option. Testimonial is one option. It's not a true option, but ये जो धोखेबाजी है, the messaging is distorting their view of the world.
कंज्यूमर कल्चर जो हम अभी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, कंज्यूमर कल्चर एंड अ कल्चर दैट रिलाइज मोर ऑन शो ऑफ इन ऑर्डर टू प्रेजेंट अ फसाड ना. तो टॉकिंग अबाउट कैपिटलिज्म, कैपिटलिज्म के अंदर रहते हुए क्या ऐसा कोई ट्विक मौजूद है जिसमें हम ये कह सकें कि इसको अगर ठीक कर दिया जाए तो ये कल्चर को जो चीज़ प्रमोट कर रही है कैपिटलिज्म के अंदर से उसको रिजॉल्व किया जा सकता है?
Very deep question. There are some people, the Fukuyamists, who believe this. They believe that if you stop monopolies from becoming too powerful, if you have redistributive mechanisms, हो सकता है काम. But ultimately ये बात आगे जाती है और जवाब ये आता है कि कैपिटलिज्म का एक हल है, वो है सोशलिज्म. उसके फीचर्स डाल दो कि एक सेफ्टी नेट डाल दो, यूनिवर्सल पब्लिक हेल्थ जो कि यहाँ पे नहीं है, मिसाल के तौर पे सेहत कार्ड हर बंदे के पास नहीं है. These sorts of things. If you have employment insurance, कि आपकी नौकरी से आपको निकाल दिया जाए तो चंद वक्त के लिए आपको पैसे मिलेंगे सरकार से. These are all socialistic things. तो एक हल ये है कि you add these elements, and what you end up with is what they call a social democracy model, which exists in Europe. Although, for example, in the Nordic countries, although there is an effort by their elite to undo it. Like Sweden की welfare state को तोड़ने की बहुत कोशिश की जा रही है by their elite. लेकिन these features help a lot. Japan's strength comes that after 1945, and it was being rebuilt after the war, the Americans actually put in very strong measures to not let the super rich become actually super rich, and became quite an equal society while maintaining the dynamism of capitalism. So ये एक model बड़ा ज़बरदस्त है. Basically, the features, if we talk in big, high abstractions like capitalism, socialism, we lose what we really care about. What we really care about is the ends, not the means. The ends are that we have a relatively prosperous society, we have a relatively decent and harmonious society, we have a dynamic society, we have a meritocratic society. That model, it is argued, exists in Singapore. That is a very strong one. It hits on all check marks of progress. Best education system, relatively low income inequality, very high GDP per capita. Most firms are relocating there, their headquarters, regional headquarters. Why? Because Lee Kuan Yew once said कि दो तरीके थे मेरे पास जब मैंने ये मुल्क खड़ा किया, या मैं खुद पैसे कमा लेता, मैं खुद अमीर हो जाता, या मेरी कौम अमीर हो जाती, और मैंने फैसला किया कि मेरी कौम अमीर हो जाए. बाकी ममालिक में ये फैसला दूसरी तरफ जाता है कि जी मैं खुद अमीर हो जाऊँ. And in that process, the ends, they had a very meritocratic system. It didn't matter what your race was, whatever. You rise to the top based on merit. And the government was actually very strong in promoting policies. So the government control, socialist control was very strong. At the same time, they pushed people towards maximum productivity, pushed firms towards maximum productivity. So they have struck a very good balance. What did they lose in the process? The Western critics say that they lost democracy in that sense. वहाँ शोर शराबा नहीं होता जो जमहूरियत में होता है ना, लोगों की बस चुपचाप करके ये असूल हैं इनके पीछे लग जाओ, ये तरीका है. तो वो आवाज़ ज़्यादा ऊंची नहीं होती. वहाँ पे च्युइंगम फेंकने का कोई $100 का फ़ाइन है, मतलब आपकी आज़ादियों को काफ़ी वो कर देते हैं. लेकिन आप उसको देख के कहेंगे कि यहाँ पे तो च्युइंगम हर जगह फेंकी जा रही है और वो भी तो मज़े की बात नहीं है, असूल होते तो ज़रा अच्छा ही होता. तो ये भी एक फ़ायदा है. So there are many existential arguments about what system can do, but I argue that the ends are more important than the means, and all societies have the possibility of achieving them. If you don't, then you will have these perverse reactions like YOLO capitalism. It's not a healthy reaction. It's fun to study, but the problem is that we're dealing with profoundly sick societies, like the United States. It's sick. Hamari society, it's sick. Bharat is sick. This is not a way for us to live. And people are miserable in general.
Indicators दे रहा है कि there are many things wrong with the system. Relevance to Pakistan of YOLO capitalism. First of all, we can discuss कि पाकिस्तान की economic system की basic, अगर if you compare it with global economy of many other countries, US में capitalism हो गया, Singapore, Sweden, bit socialist touch. Pakistan में, other than this, कि it's an informal economy. Second ये हो सकता है कि it's a largely real estate based economy.
Correct.
तीसरा ये कि ये ज़्यादा productivity पे नहीं बल्कि fixed assets पे rely कर रही है. What else can it be?
If you had to look at the historical materialism paradigm, we're not hunter-gatherers.
Definitely.
We're not socialists. किसी को किसी से हमदर्दी नहीं है, except civil society में चंदा वगैरह खैरात पे चलाना, which is not socialism.
Not socialism.
We are not capitalists because we don't have any of the dynamic forces of capitalism. Nothing at all.
बिल्कुल.
और यहाँ पे कोई बिजनेस शुरू भी करना चाहे तो उसके इतने hurdles, इतनी रुकावटें खड़ी कर देती है सरकार.
Not facilitative.
It's obstructive. It's not facilitative at all. What are you left with? By the process of elimination, you're left with feudalism. जागीरदारी का निज़ाम है. कई जगहों पे तो literally है in the interior, right? But वाकई it's a monstrous system. इब्लीसी निज़ाम है. इस्लाम से इसका कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है. And it predates that. It predates the advent of Islam कि इस तरह की जागीरदारी हो. And these people, the feudals, really don't care about the people they lord over. Feudalism में ये भी requirement थी, at least in the good days of Europe, at least in good parts of it, of feudalism, that the feudal lord had an obligation towards the serf. उसका ख्याल भी रखा जाता था. This was part of the social contract. So feudalism was not a progressive system. It was not a fair system. It's not an equal system. But even then there were some obligations of the feudal lord. हमारे यहाँ तो feudal lord की भी obligations नहीं है. So we have the worst of all worlds. And this is actually a lecture I gave at Air War College and other places. When we look at economic systems, I was asked to talk on this. My final conclusion was that we have taken the worst elements of each one and jumbled that together, and that khichdi is our system. For example, feudalism still implies this obligation, wo nahi hai. Capitalism requires a certain dynamism, wo nahi hai. Badmashi chal rahi hai har bande ki. Socialism still requires a state to do that stuff. हमने socialism की weak point ले ली कि government intervention और government हर चीज़ में intervene कर रही है. The government footprint is so large in our economy कि किसी को सांस नहीं लेने देती. At the same time, जो capitalists हैं, they have no sense of it's the Sate mentality, right? So they just create the same Suzuki Meran for 500 years. By the time you'll be a millionaire, but the Suzuki Meran of your bachpan and today is exactly the same. Kyun? Automobiles abroad, आजकल की, they're like Optimus Prime. It's a transformer. It is so advanced. It's like a jet fighter. But यहाँ पे वही Suzuki Meran डब्बा चल रहा है. वही साबुन बिक रहा है, वही shampoo बिक रहा है. Nothing moves forward. So then it doesn't take any of the good things. So what we have is a khichdi of all sorts. I don't care what label we give to it, but we have, instead of taking the best of each system, as Singapore did, we have taken the worst of each system because we have been sleepwalking through this process. And I want to take you back a little bit. I want to take you back 1,000 years, 2,000 years. This part that is today Pakistan had a relationship to the rest of South Asia and Central Asia, where it was a food-producing breadbasket. That's what it did. It produced the wheat and stuff, and it would feed the rest. But it wasn't particularly dynamic industrially, manufacturing. That high-quality stuff was in what became later East Pakistan, or Bengal, as it's commonly known throughout that period. Bengal was the dynamic part. Dynamic, and along with Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, this was the driving force. So
yeah.
People of Bengal are much more dynamic and industrious. And today we see that again. Bangladesh today is a very dynamic place, focused on getting things done. This is not unusual. The boomers, people born in the 50s or whatever, 40s, they think, देखो Bangladesh आगे निकल गया. But if I go back 1,000 years, इन्होंने ही आगे निकलना था क्योंकि यही सबसे आगे हुआ करते थे. Other parts of South Asia specialized in various things, such as spices or in gold or others. And so there was a very big equilibrium. This equilibrium was the reason why the Mughal Empire was the most prosperous empire on earth. It was 25% of world GDP. The only competitor was Ming China and then Qing China. And they couldn't really compete because यहाँ आबादी ज़्यादा थी. And every part specialized in everything. उसमें हम किधर आते थे किसान, which is fine because food is the fundamental thing. But it means that today we are not building on that strength because we have a food insecurity issue. We are not the breadbasket. We don't export our food. In fact, we have to import food now.
कमी पूरी करने के लिए.
कमी पूरी करने के लिए. You know, we actually produce as much wheat as Ukraine. 25 million, in peacetime Ukraine. 25 million tons. But Ukraine has only 40 million people. That's a decent sized population. We have 2 crore people, 230 million people, which is an indecent sized population. It's just too large. So you cannot feed 230 million people with 25 million tons of wheat. So now you have to import. And those 230 million people are then not getting the investment of education. They're not getting a quality education to then add value at higher ends of the supply chain or the value chain. So you have all these mouths to feed and they're not doing anything. Even if you feed that mouth, you don't know what to do with it after it grows up, except it'll create more mouths. That is the paradox right now. We're stuck in this. What do we do then if we fall into that historical paradigm? You should be a food surplus country, which means you should be investing in dams and canals and food security and agricultural research. There is work done piecemeal on that historically here, but not in a concerted effort that we are water secure and food secure.
Yes.
The second thing is you focus on the higher end of the chain because a lot of bright minds have emerged from here historically, from what is today Pakistan. Huge advances in science and technology historically came from here, right here, smart people. So you invest in the human capital. And that means that you have a good education system, a meritocratic education system, and that is your priority. You can't just have 1% of GDP, you should have 10% of GDP. And your teachers should be the best in the world. In an Islamic society, I believe that the two most important professions are the teachers and the judges. But at risk of going to jail, I would argue that these are professions that are severely deficient.
Yes, they are.
These are the two that you would have in a truly Islamic society, and you would progress, and that's how you would get your good economic progress too. You need the protection and enforcement of contracts. You need strong judges. You need strong judicial performance. At the same time, you need strong teachers to inculcate a work ethic, which we were talking about earlier, in the youth.
I think it is commonly argued when I used to read about it, I still do, population growth is something which is the most important issue in Pakistan right now. Isko control, it's a vicious cycle. इसको अगर कंट्रोल कर लिया जाए तो बहुत सारे इश्यूज ऑटोमेटिकली इससे इम्पैक्ट होके कम हो सकते हैं, लेकिन क्योंकि वो इश्यूज पॉपुलेशन पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ इज़ इंक्रीजिंग, पॉपुलेशन इज़ ग्रोइंग, उसकी वजह से वो इश्यूज सॉल्व नहीं हो रहे हैं, और उन इश्यूज सॉल्व ना होने की वजह से पॉपुलेशन मज़ीद बढ़ रही है. वी आर ट्रैप्ड इन दिस. And then there is a dysfunctional economy that is not serving the people. It's sort of a mess. Lekin then my question was from this point of our discussion कि how is Pakistan's economy characterized? कि is something like YOLO capitalism going to emerge? I don't think so. लेकिन are there any chances?
It
कि
requires
जी यहाँ
certain
पे कोई लेट्स से निज़ाम नहीं चल रहा, लोग ठीक है वो शायद रेडिट के ऊपर वो काम ना करें क्योंकि इट्स नॉट क्वाइट पॉपुलर ओवर हियर, ना लोगों में इतना आई सपोज वी कैन सपोज कि जी थोड़ा शऊर इस हवाले से फाइनेंशियल मार्केट के हवाले से जनरल पॉपुलेशन को कम है, लेकिन क्या एक मिलना और उस चीज़ को चैलेंज करना, इज़ इट पॉसिबल in this society?
it
And
requires
I don't think it is. So we can also skip directly. Okay, why is it not?
you would require certain ingredients for YOLO capitalism. You would require capitalism, जो कि यहाँ पे नहीं है.
पहले तो वो ही बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
You would, but you have the YOLO part of it
Yes.
already. ये जो population बढ़ रही है. Look at the math. The metric that you use for economic progress, the shorthand, is GDP per capita. If your GDP is growing at 2% and your population is also growing at 2%, your GDP per capita increased at zero.
Zero.
Zero ho gaya. Now let's say your economy is growing at 3%, but your population is growing at 4%, your GDP per capita grew at minus 1%. It shrinks.
Yes.
So the GDP per capita has to grow at 7 to 8% per year, that you have a population growth of 3%, and you can say कि जी 4 से 5% वाकई इजाफा हुआ in people's incomes. This is the dynamic behind it. YOLO capitalism, we have the YOLO part of it because जिस तरह से यहाँ पे आबादी बढ़ रही है, वाकई कल का कुछ पता नहीं. कल का कुछ नहीं पता, लेकिन अब 10-10 बच्चे पैदा कर रहे हैं. मतलब I would have 10 kids if I felt कि मेरी इतनी वावा जिंदगी है.
एक सल्तनत है. फिर 10 kids make sense.
फिर
कि जी ये सल्तनत है, एक प्रोविंस इसका है, दूसरा प्रोविंस इसका है, तीसरा इसका है.
मतलब life is so good कि I feel like 10 new people need to enjoy this life.
Enjoy this life.
But the people who are having 10 kids अपनी जिंदगी से सताए हुए हैं, और आगे जो 10 आने हैं वो भी सताएंगे. This doesn't make sense. The big debate I want to ask you is, look at China right now. Their population is now going to be in second place in the world. The last time it was in second place was Mughal Empire. So Ming China had less population. Uske baad se China has been more. Some people are saying this is a good thing, but some people are saying it's a bad thing for China. कि population अब कम होती जा रही है, लोग बुढ़े होते जा रहे हैं. What do you think intuitively? Is it a good thing कि इनकी आबादी कम हो रही है, or a bad thing कि इनकी आबादी कम हो रही है?
आई सपोज कि अगर यंग आबादी कम हो रही है, ओल्ड आबादी बढ़ रही है, जो रेशो है यंग एंड ओल्ड का, इफ दिस इज़ हैपनिंग, तो जो सिस्टम यंग आबादी पहले वाली क्रिएट कर चुकी है वो अनसस्टेनेबल हो जाएगा, बिकॉज पीपल वॉन्ट बी एबल टू sustain it and maintain it, and that may damage the economy of China. और उसके बाद अगर वो हुआ, that would create some unrest.
It's a very good way to put it. I think also that there should be some sort of balance. You need some growth, but it has to be sustainable.
Sustainable growth. We talked about in our first episode with Dr. Ilhan, stationary growth. किसी एक ये किन का कॉन्सेप्ट था, आई एम फॉरगेटिंग द नेम ऑफ द फिलोसोफर. मिल का है शायद.
और मकसद क्या था?
स्टेशनरी ग्रोथ मीन्स के एट वन स्टेज जहाँ पे आप जाके ह्यूमन पॉपुलेशन को अच्छा फीड और मेंटेन रख सकें, वहाँ पे जाके ग्रोथ को रोक दें, क्योंकि देयर इज़ नो सच थिंग एज इन्फिनिट ग्रोथ.
Yes.
वी आर स्क्वीजिंग द रिसोर्सेज आउट ऑफ द प्लानट.
Malthus,
Malthus, yes.
the Malthusian perspective.
Yes.
That there is a difference between the geometric rate of population versus the arithmetic rate of food production. And he is right. The Malthusian question applies to us. The thing that always pushed Malthus out was that actually we made innovations. We made innovations that increased the green revolution. Hogi misal ke taur pe. Actually, it is possible for us to feed 300 million people here easily. But it requires certain ingredients. It requires that our deserts have to be made agrarian. The forests have to be reforested. The human capital has to be invested in. Women have to be empowered to make decisions in the household.
Almost 50% are just out of the economy. They are working in the informal economy. Lekin majority can be said that is not even working.
No, it's
or
not.
If it is working, that is not contributing to the actual productive economy that is required to sustain a huge population.
We have to take a digression here, because there is a critique. Nancy Keller and other feminist economists bring this up. कि जी everything that a guy does, it is economy. Everything that a woman does, it's not economy. ये bias है, कितना जुल्म है. औरतें तो इतनी जान मार रही होती हैं. यहाँ शायद नहीं, या यहाँ शायद ज़्यादा. लेकिन certainly there are other countries where women are not just doing the economically productive, but also the socially productive work, the labor. For example, in the Philippines, nurses भी overseas वही जा रही हैं, remit भी वही कर रही हैं, बच्चे भी वो पैदा कर रही हैं. They're incredible women. Rwanda, just an example, वहाँ पे कॉफ़ी भी वो उगा रही है और बच्चे का भी ख्याल रख रही है, और बंदा जो है वो नशे कर रहा है, बैठे वेलियाँ मार रहा है. I mean, they're terrible. So the fact is that the women is doing both. But the feminist perspective is correct in that जो चीज़ें जो घर की होती हैं, जिनसे कि कौम आगे चलती है, बच्चों का ख्याल रखना, ये वो उनको काउंट
नहीं काउंट किया जाता.
और जो तनख्वाह है उसको काउंट कर रहे हैं.
There is a book by some author, I'm forgetting the name of the author. The name of the book is Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner. है ना?
बिल्कुल.
वो कि एडम स्मिथ का खाना किसने बनाया? अगर वो बहुत बड़ा फिलोसोफर बन गया है, तो उसको सपोर्ट किसने किया? The woman behind that.
Exactly right. So economics has this intrinsic bias, and it is wrong. But still, here is the way to look at it from evolutionary biology, so evolutionary economics deriving from evolutionary biology. There are two forms of reproductive strategies that animals take. There is K selection and R selection. K selection is typically done by large animals, sophisticated animals, like whales, elephants, etc. They're big. They decide that we will have only a few kids. Whale, typically mother has one calf with her. Elephants, typically you'll see a lot of adults but only a few kids, no? So they invest a lot of resources into those kids, energy into those kids. Unki grooming hoti hai. So they become big and they're strong, and not too many predators feed on them anyways. So yeah. But the risk is that if the whale, khuda na khasta, the calf dies, game is over. A herd can thin out very quickly of elephants, and a herd of whales also, a shoal, whatever they call the collective of whales, it thins out very quickly if the children die. So that is a feminine-driven K selection, because it's the quality. When females get to choose, they prefer quality of kids.
Yes.
Because it takes a lot of energy in the female organism to raise a child. So they prefer quality. Our selection is the opposite. Our selection is typically done by small organisms and who have a fast reproduction cycle and a very high death rate. They tend to be low in the food chain. Many things feed on them. Mosquitoes, frogs, things like that. हरी चीज़ खाई जा रही है. सांप भी खा रहा है तो मेंढक भी खा रहा है, तो ये वो परिंदे भी खा रहे हैं, सब खा रहे हैं. बिल्लियाँ भी खा रही हैं. They tend to reproduce a lot with the assumption that most of them will die. Most tadpoles will die. Most eggs will die. And that is a male-driven thing, because the oviraptor, what jo relationship hota hai, the males tend to have inseminate a ton of eggs. And hota hai, I don't really know. Our society is very much R selection based. And this is the typical thing with not stage 0 of historical materialism, but certainly stage 1, because you assume that most of the kids will die. Because of dengue, cholera, whatever, dysentery, diarrhea. Kids die of terrible things in these conditions. So you assume that most kids will die, so you just keep reproducing for as much as possible. The woman doesn't make choices in that. You're literally going on quantity. But what happened in the 20th century was that the causes of death were reduced in many places. Dysentery, smallpox was eradicated in the 20th century. A lot of good things were done, but the mindset remained that of our selection कि क्या पता इनमें से कोई मर ही न जाए और कोई मरता है नहीं. कोविड यहाँ आया, कोई कोविड से यहाँ मरा नहीं, अल्लाह का शुक्र है. कोविड हमें नहीं हुआ, हम कोविड को हो गए. Nobody died from it. In America, 1 million people died. So we are a resilient nation, mashallah, but resilient also has its its downside, and its backward mirror image, which is that you are reproducing under an R selection paradigm, but the quality of the kids is very low. Quality of the kids can be seen in this sense that they have malnutrition, they have iodine deficiencies, they're stunted or wasted children, and that is very bad. So what are these kids going to do? They're not dying. They're being born, but they're growing up. These are the kids who are driving motorcycles on your streets and they ram into your car all day and they die. Why is they have stunted brains. Their judgmental latitude is poor.
ये तो ब्रॉड एक आ गया ना, डेमोक्रेटिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी भी इसको कहा जाता है. लेकिन फिर आई वाज थिंकिंग वंस कि यार ठीक है, मेरी शायद दस्तरस ना हो ज़्यादा फैक्ट्स के ऊपर, वी हैव टू लुक एट द एग्जैक्ट स्टैटिस्टिक्स, लेकिन एनेक्डोटल ऑब्जर्वेशन में ये भी होता है कि ठीक है जी, अगर डेथ रेट बहुत एंशियंट सोसाइटीज़ में लोग जल्दी दुनिया से चले जाते थे ड्यू टू मैनी डिजीज़ दैट यूज टू स्प्रेड वेरी क्विकली,
जी जी,
कि लोग जो हैं वो आज उतनी वर्स नहीं हैं, लेकिन फिर भी द पॉपुलेशन इज़ इंक्रीजिंग. देयर मस्ट बी सम अदर फैक्टर अदर देन दिस डेथ फैक्टर. कि लेट्स से इन सम विलेज इन पाकिस्तान जहाँ पे एजुकेशन नहीं पहुँची है, जहाँ पे वुमेन ज़्यादा एम्पावर्ड नहीं है, वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा पॉपुलेशन बढ़ रही है. तो हम ये सपोज़ कर सकते हैं कि जो बहुत पहली सोसाइटीज़ में, बहुत इनसिक्योर सोसाइटीज़ में, जो वॉर्स की वजह से, डिजीज़ की वजह से लोग बच्चे जल्दी मर जाते थे, वो शायद आज उतना नहीं है. माल न्यूट्रिशन की वजह से तो हो रहा है एट लेटेस्ट स्टेज, बहुत लेटेस्ट स्टेजेस पे जाके हो रहा है इनडायरेक्ट कॉजेज़ की वजह, लेकिन डायरेक्ट नहीं है. लेकिन फिर भी द पॉपुलेशन इज़ इंक्रीजिंग.
यस.
और फिर हम सिंगल आउट कर सकते हैं शायद वुमेन एजेंसी को.
That is it. That is it. And by the way, malnutrition doesn't mean you die. It just means you're sick.
Sick and slowly dying.
Yes. And it also means that you're stunted in your brain. But you're alive.
Yes.
And you're capable of reproduction once you hit 15. ये तो 15 साल की उम्र में शादी हो जाती है इनकी. So ये इसमें लग जाते हैं काम में at that age. So then the next generation, by your time you're 30, you're a grandfather.
Yes.
By the time you're 45, you're a great-grandfather. By the time you're 60, you're a great-great-great-grandfather. It doesn't make sense. It would make sense if there were some countervailing force that was killing. Wars, diseases, ये वो होता था, लोग बहुत मरते थे. The life
population बड़ी बैलेंस रही है, एकदम से बढ़ी एग्रीकल्चरल रेवोल्यूशन के बाद.
Exactly right. एक तवाज़ुन था. That's what Malthus was trying to grapple with, the geometric versus the arithmetic progression. It doesn't make sense anymore. We need to focus on the quality of kids, and that's why I asked you the question कि China ने सही किया या गलत किया, because they did a radical thing. They did a one-child policy. बस मैं कुछ नहीं जानता. Now the quality of people in China is high, of course, but it's getting better. But the human capital, their education system, their universities rank very high, etc. Their innovation. Now they're not copycats of the United States. Now they are approaching the boundary of scientific knowledge, and they'll push it further. So if they have fewer people doing that, what's the big deal? क्या हर्ज है इसमें? The quality of life thing. Maybe we should have the degrowth. एक तो sustainable growth वाला या static growth वाले models हैं. Then there's the degrowth model, which says that you should actually just have about 1 million people on Earth. What's the big deal? But they should be high quality people, well fed. 1 million नहीं तो 100 million. 100 million नहीं तो 1 billion. Still fine. West Pakistan's population was just 30 million in 1947.
Yes.
That's why
जो
our
आज कराची की है around ऐसी.
मतलब Karachi is 20 million
20
plus,
है.
but we don't have a localized census because इसमें सियासत आ जाती है, unfortunately. And a part of the population there is transitory. यानी कि अफगानिस्तान में आधा वक्त गुजारा, आधा इधर गुजारा, ये वो. So we don't know who lives there.
बिल्कुल.
That is our fundamental weakness as a state, that we don't know who we're obliged to. So if we had 30 million people today, well, that is 8 times smaller. And let's say that economic gains वही होती जो कि वेलियां मार के ही हुई हैं ना, कोई इतना खास तो हमने किया नहीं है. We would be 8 times richer GDP per capita automatically. And this is why your grandparents and great grandparents spoke so nicely of Pakistan. खुला डुला होता था, लोग एक दूसरे को जानते थे.
बिल्कुल
ये वो
बिल्कुल. हम तो निकलते थे घर से बाहर, वी यूज्ड टू वॉक एंड वी यूज्ड टू रन, ग्रीनरी होती थी एक्सेट्रा.
होती थी ना,
वही
खुला
सब
डुला
कुछ,
होता था.
बिल्कुल.
My father used to run, ये जो है the mall in Rawalpindi, that main Murray Road या Peshawar Road, all those.
Giga Mall.
Not Giga Mall is in DHA, but ये जो है वो जो main street है Peshawar Road जिसको आज कहते हैं ना, the mall, which was all those old buildings and stuff in the heart of Pindi, सदर को touch जो करती है सड़क.
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा.
He used to bicycle on it because there weren't many cars there
अच्छा.
in the early 60s. Can you imagine a kid on a bicycle on that street now, or that road? Doesn't make sense. So when you have fewer people, you actually value human life. That's why stage 0 people really valued each person and they were quite egalitarian. But by the time you're producing surplus people, you don't really care. यहाँ पे 500 बंदे मरते हैं, किसको फ़र्क पड़ा है? People don't care. हमदर्दी के तौर पे हम कोई अल्लाह अल्लाह कर लेंगे, but people really here don't care about each other, and it shows in the way they drive. It shows in the way they deal with each other. They're so mean to each other. That's because you have too many people. एक बंदा मर जाता है, क्या फ़र्क है? 22 करोड़ और पड़े हुए हैं ना, क्या? And this is very tragic because all human life, in principle, is valuable.
Valuable, yes.
But we don't make it manifest because we hold them back and then hold them down and then let them die. This is where we are stuck. So for us, the transition from R selection to K selection paradigm is very important. Women empowerment is the primary strategy to do that. अगर ये फैसले कर सकती हों in particular, so already it'll be a quality
They'll make
decision.
good decisions.
They will. Now here is the counter argument. There are societies that are dying. उनकी आबादी replacement, not just Japan but Lithuania. They will have
बिल्कुल, हाँ, हाँ, हाँ.
nobody there left. फिर क्या फ़ायदा? मतलब अगर इनको इतनी empowerment दे दी कि सारे रहे ही नहीं, तो फिर क्या फ़ायदा? How do you deal with this? कि आबादी कम होती जा रही, क्वालिटी करते करते बुढ़े होके मर गए और कोई रहा नहीं. Is that really a good strategy?
मेरे माइंड में फिर एक अजीब से आइडियाज़ घूमते रहते हैं, तो उनमें से अभी एक इंट्यूटिवली आया है कि ठीक है जी, अगर नहीं पैदा हो रहे तो क्या प्रॉब्लम है?
ठीक है.
इफ़ दे आर हैप्पी by not producing children, then it's fine.
Yes.
It's not a compulsion on them to continue with this. This guy Schopenhauer says that life should end. This is all misery.
Very
so,
true.
एक ये हो सकता है.
Yes, and this is actually the Buddhist notion too. You're actually supposed to liberate yourself, just to break the cycle. दोबारा पैदा होते रहना, ये तो एक बड़ा जुल्म है. अगर आप पैदा हुए हैं, इसका मतलब है पिछले जन्म में आप सही बंदे नहीं थे. क्योंकि
अच्छा, बुद्धिज्म में. अच्छा.
वरना तो आपने निर्वाणा हासिल कर लिया होता और फिर ये सिलसिला टूट जाता और आप आज़ाद होते, रूह होते ऊपर. अगर आप पैदा हो रहे हैं, इसका मतलब है आप बदमाश थे पहले या ठीक नहीं थे किसी लिए. As we were saying before, बाहर भी दूध की नहरें नहीं बह रही. YOLO capitalism शुरू क्यों हुआ है?
We see things through social media. We see the world through social media. और वहाँ पे algorithms हमें वही दिखा रहे हैं जो लोगों को अच्छा लग रहा है. और अक्सर हम ये भी कहते हैं कि यार सोशल मीडिया पर कंटेंट ही ऐसा है. नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, और भी होगा. जैसे लेट से हमारा पॉडकास्ट होगा, वो ज़्यादा नहीं जाएगा व्यूज़ में, क्योंकि इट्स नॉट इन डिमांड. People like to see things that are more exotic.
Yes.
More appealing.
Provocative
as well.
Akal istemal karna is not appealing.
Not appealing.
So the people you choose, the way you design, mashallah, your fantastic podcast, people will not be interested.
Not be interested.
You should really
and that's
do
a fact.
You should do it for yourself.
And for a few listeners who want to listen.
Well, let me tell you something. The people who listen to your podcast, whatever, ये काम के लोग हैं. They are people of substance. I know that. I know who is listening to it.
Yeah.
These are the only people. You can take that 3K, 4K, 5K people, और आप बाकी सारा पाकिस्तानी मिटा दें. ये 5,000 will make a utopia for you. Really?
There's a line, he who displeases the masses displeases the wise. So that's the idea behind it.
It is a noble pursuit. The people who listen to your podcast are the people who are people of substance. And I know that for a fact. मैं अभी हवाई firing नहीं मारा. So you should be very proud of this. And it isn't, you shouldn't be discouraged by the lack of views.
Yeah.
एक आपने बात की, social media gives you what you want, right?
Yes.
But there is a flaw in the design too, which we don't talk about enough.
Algorithm?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly, the algorithm. A type of algorithmic method ke liye.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this. Do you think TikTok specifically should be banned in Pakistan or not?
मैंने इतना यूज़ नहीं किया है, लेकिन आई डोंट थिंक एनी मीडियम शुड बी बैंड abruptly. It's a very difficult question. क्योंकि a few days ago I was listening to this conversation between a BBC journalist and Elon Musk. Right?
Yes.
So journalist ने कहा कि I'm seeing a lot of hate content these days. So Musk asked him कि how do you define it? Or he said कि इस तरह है, any post that provokes a response. So let's say it's a negative response to it. And Musk said that, do you mean it should be banned? It's slightly, let's say, sexist or something. It should be banned. So he was not able to answer that.
Yes, and he said, give me one concrete example.
Yes, he was not able to give it.
He's not.
He was sort of not prepared, I suppose.
Yes.
लेकिन ये है कि हम कैसे फैसला कर लें कि क्या चीज़ बैन होनी चाहिए, क्या नहीं होनी चाहिए, क्या चीज़ ठीक है, क्या गलत है. Then we are moving towards authoritarianism.
Precisely. Precisely. I think you have given a very solid answer, but I ask you to consider this. The TikTok that you'll see in Pakistan is not the TikTok that you'll see in America.
बिल्कुल.
And it's certainly not the TikTok that you see in China. That is the most. This is why Congress in the United States is so anti-TikTok और hearings कर रहे हैं. बड़ा मज़ा आया था मुझे, वो बुलाया उसके CEO को और वो कहते हैं, oh you Chinese, ये वो, you Chinese doing this that. CEO कहते हैं, actually I'm from Singapore. मैं तो यहाँ
अच्छा.
It's not my fault. ये आपकी जो नस्ल परस्ती इसको आप ज़रा परे कर दें. But the fact was that this American rage against the modalities of TikTok is valid to the extent that TikTok in America is different from China. In America, basically, TikTok is thumkiyan lagana, dance dunes, bongiyan marna. Here also it is bongiyan marna. But in China, TikTok is a very beautiful thing because it is engineered to be positive and to stimulate a positivity in the users. मैं मिसाल देता हूँ, मैंने एक TikTok की, you will, आपके आंखों में आंसू आ जाएंगे, इतनी sweet story थी. एक communist official, he is saying goodbye to his people in a village. Because he had spent 20 years building this village from nothing into a modern settlement. And these people were in love with him. They cared about him. कहते हैं हमें भूलना नहीं. कहते हैं मैं तुम लोगों को कभी नहीं भूलूंगा. इतनी मोहब्बत है. तो आप एक चाइनीज़ आप कह रहे हो, हाँ ये कम्युनिस्ट कितने अच्छे लोग होते हैं. देखो उन्होंने एक तामीर कर दी है. प्यार, मोहब्बत. उसने अपनी जान मारी इनकी खातिर और उन्होंने मिल के एक नया ये सिलसिला शुरू किया. कितने खूबसूरत बात है. ठुमकियाँ वुमकियाँ नहीं है उसमें. That is the difference. So you can engineer positivity, and they are not engineered. And they means TikTok as well as Facebook and Twitter and all this. They want basically the provocative. Your show is not going to provoke people. Log sunenge aur kahenge, that was nice. I learned something. But I'm not provoked. Mushtail nahi hua. Oh, I learned something. That's pretty cool. Lekin mushtail can be positive, but mushtail is often negative. And if you react to a post, even negatively, it'll come up more often. Then you'll be even more enraged. That's why the polarization in America. The right feels that the left is dominating all of media, and the left feels that the right controls everything, and nothing makes sense to anybody. So you can engineer these things, and that's why भारत ने TikTok को मनसूख कर दिया है ही नहीं. भारत में 2 साल से there is no TikTok.
मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि let's say एक TikTok का एप्लीकेशन, उसका एक ही तरह का एल्गोरिथम, राइट, और उसको साइमल्टेनियसली लेट्स से अ थॉट एक्सपेरिमेंट अमेरिका में, चाइना में और पाकिस्तान में फेंक दिया जाता है यूज़ करने के लिए. मेरा ये ख़्याल है कि कुछ टाइम बाद अमेरिका में और पाकिस्तान में या और ममालिक में जहाँ पे इसका नेगेटिव ज़्यादा यूज़ होता है, वहाँ पे इसके अंदर ज़्यादा जो कंटेंट चल रहा होगा वो नेगेटिव होगा, और चाइना जैसी सोसाइटीज़ या किसी और प्रोडक्टिव सोसाइटी में इसका पॉजिटिव होगा. इज़ इट द केस, या फिर एल्गोरिथम ही बायस्ड है किसी तरीके से?
एल्गोरिथम ही बायस्ड है. The algorithm is engineered to select positive things to transmit to those people and engineered to sell the provocative and negative stuff to these people.
And TikTok is coming from China, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
So that you can engineer it to be positive, but if you engineered it to be positive in Pakistan, वो इस तरह होगा. Maybe you've seen some videos के एक भिखारी type बड़ा मजलूम तजलील हो रहा है, भूखा है, और किसी ने पीछे जाके खाना रख दिया रमज़ान में उसके पीछे और गायब हो गया. It's beautiful. It is Islamic, it is positive, and that would be the most viral thing. ये वो लोग जो नेकी पाकिस्तान में हर जगह हर वक्त हो रही होती है, and वो अगर हर वक्त नज़र आए तो विल बी लाइक देखो नेक लोग हैं, अच्छे लोग हैं. How do you think we survived COVID? It was because people were नेक to each other. That's the difference between us और भारत. भारत में nobody cared for anybody, तबाह हो गया. यहाँ पे लोगों के दरमियान एक इस्लामी एक किरदार obligation है, मदद करते हैं. That's all you would see on the algorithm. In America, good things happen every second, everywhere. It's a fantastic place. But that's all you would then see. Instead, the algorithm there is showing you all of the violent, pornographic, incendiary, mean-spirited stuff that really roils those people and facilitates the inculcation of radical notions in the mind.
So TikTok should be banned entirely, or it should be regulated.
I agree with what you said, that it should be cross-questioned. Matlab,
Cross-questioned at least. Lekin who would cross-question?
in the US, it's Congress that is doing
Congress.
that. But it's not satisfied with its progress so far. So they may make a radical decision to ban it. Because cross-questioning, the democratic process
उसके लिए
of
फिर तैयारी करनी पड़ती है ना, थोड़ा आर्ग्यूमेंट्स के साथ आना पड़ता है. तो वो कहते हैं यार इसको बैन ही कर देते हैं, इसका आप ख़त्म करें. We were discussing something कि पाकिस्तान में क्यों वो वर्जन नहीं आता है योलो कैपिटलिज्म वाला, एंड यू सेड कि देयर हैज़ टू बी कैपिटलिज्म फर्स्ट. द इकोनॉमी इज़ नॉट जस्ट सूटेबल फॉर दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग.
जी.
लेकिन इससे रिलेटेड एक और क्वेश्चन ये था जिस पे हम पहले बात कर रहे थे कि लोग खड़े क्यों नहीं होते, इस तरह की कोई बात थी. एंड आई सेड कि इट्स प्रॉब्ली बिकॉज लोगों का ये है माइंडसेट कि यार let's leave it in for the afterlife, the judgment and punishment and rewards for the afterlife देखा जाएगा. Again, you disagreed with that, and you said that there is some other factor.
Yes.
वो क्या है?
The lens that I am working on, I will write a comprehensive work on this, a paper probably, is the caste system. There's research that has come out of PIDE, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. They do very good work.
Yes.
They are doing a thorough survey of Pakistan, and they're asking, who are we? So, बलूचिस्तान में पूछें, गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में पूछें, कौन हो तुम? वो कहते हैं हम पाकिस्तानी हैं पहले. पंजाब में पूछें क्या हैं? ओ जी हम जट हैं, अराई हैं, राजपूत हैं. चौहान्स are a kind of Rajput, by the way. हम ये हैं तो वो हैं, तो कास्ट मैटर्स अ लॉट. एंड सिंध में पूछें कास्ट मैं ये हूँ. दे डोंट इवन थिंक एट द मुस्लिम लेवल उम्मत का, much was the purpose of this place. They don't even think Pakistani. They say हम जट हैं तो अराई हैं तो ये वो. The caste system is actually a very big deal here. That is why now I'm studying the works of scholars like Ambedkar, who's an anthropologist as well as writing the Constitution of the Republic of India. And I've come to the realization कि यहाँ जो लोग थे ये 5,000 साल से दबे हुए होने की वजह से इनमें वो दम नहीं है कि अगर ये तजलील भी हो रहे हों तो ये खड़े होने की वो नहीं रखते. और तारीख़ इसकी तस्दीक करता है. 1857 mutiny was led by Bengalis. The army was Bengali. They stood up, and it was the people of here, northern India as well as here in Pakistan, that betrayed them. Then they created, the British rewarded them by creating this myth of martial races, which poisoned the minds of the West Pakistanis. But even the sacrifices for Pakistan were given, by and large, above all, huge, by the East Pakistan people. Because in ये दम था. They were politically conscious people. They're aware people. Their literacy may not be that much higher than the rest, but they're an aware people के खड़े होना है. But the central Indian plains, northern India here, all the way to Afghanistan, invaders have come, beaten people down, and the local Brahmins collude with them and just let them loot, and the ordinary person never has stood up in 5,000 years.
So it's not the religion that is at play, क्योंकि बाकी ममालिक भी हैं Muslim ममालिक. It's the caste system and the earliest history of this region.
Precisely, because you see these 2016 mein, the Turkish people stood up. In 2011, the Arabs stood up, the Arab Spring. Bengal stood up. It stood up to West Pakistan, in 1970. It also stood up to the British in 1857 and in 1905 at the partition of Bengal. So it's not a Muslim thing. In fact, the more you read into Islam, it asks you to strive for purposefully and meaningfully for what is right. And all monotheistic religions encourage this too. This martyr mentality is very strong in Catholicism as well. And the Jews are all about being persecuted all the time. And so standing up for what is right is strong in monotheism. But then the local context means that people adopt religion differently. Most of the converts to Islam in this khitta were lower caste people because they saw a good deal compared to what Hinduism was offering them, which was just exploitation. But very few Brahmins converted to Islam. And those that did have had a very profound and positive impact on Islam in South Asia. For example, Allama Iqbal's family came from a Kashmiri Pandit origin. And for me, Allama Iqbal is still the last intellectual word on Islamic thought. And he's from a Pandit family. So the Brahmin has kept the brain and monopolized the brain and asked the Kshatriyas to tyrannize everybody. Whether you don't, the problem with us is we don't even understand this language, this Sanskrit. What is this caste system? We don't even have a bearing in this geography. We don't really understand this stuff. Turkish drama देख के एक फरसवीन जुबान बोल के अरबी कपड़े पहन के तो क्या किधर दी किधर क्या
completely lost.
It's tragic because we're bigger than the entire Arab world put together, right? Pakistan is huge. What is the Persian world? It's tiny. We are the big deal. लेकिन हम इधर से उधर से इधर से. So to create that indigenous identity will require कि ये खड़े हो जाएं, किसी की माँ बहन करें और इकट्ठे होकर एक नई चीज़ तामीर करें. Because वरना बंगाल टाइप बांग्लादेश में अभी भी पाकिस्तानियत है. The idea, after all, they gave sacrifices. लेकिन उनका पाकिस्तान से, रिपब्लिक से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है. पाकिस्तानियत तो एक अंदर की चीज़ है. It's a soft power project. So उसके लिए थोड़ी हार्ड पावर खड़े हो जाएं and stand up for what is right. ये जब तक नहीं करेंगे फिर अगले 5,000 साल भी इसी तरह गुजर जाएंगे. और उस वक्त पॉपुलेशन क्या होगी? अभी हम डेमोग्राफिक्स की बात कर रहे थे.
Inconceivable.
It just doesn't make sense, right?
चलें लास्ट जो हमारा पॉइंट है ब्रॉडर कैटेगरी है डिस्कशन की वो है वी सी लॉट ऑफ एड्स फॉर यंगस्टर्स के जी देयर इज़ अ ट्रेडिंग ऐप यू कैन इन्वेस्ट योर मनी इनटू इट एंड देन आपको बताया जाएगा कब ग्राफ ऊपर जा रहा है कब नीचे जा रहा है एंड यू कैन मेक अ लॉट ऑफ मनी आउट ऑफ इट. हाउ रैशनल इज़ इट टू ठीक है टिंकरिंग करना इज समथिंग एल्स लेकिन इन्वेस्ट योर टाइम एंड एनर्जी एंड रिसोर्सेज इनटू दिस थिंग इज इट रैशनल फॉर यंगस्टर्स स्पेशली?
Let me first ask you your intuition on this question. What do you feel?
I haven't used these apps yet, लेकिन I believe कि nobody knows where the economy is going to go. It's nothing can be predicted. तो it's a gamble. और बहुत से लोग anecdotal observations की बुनियाद पे लोग इसमें इन्वेस्ट करते हैं and they lose a lot of valuable, scarce even resources into this thing. So I think ठीक है पूरी दुनिया ट्रेडिंग करती है लेकिन देयर हैज़ टू बी अ सब्सटैंशियल एजुकेशन बिफोर समबडी ब्रोकर बनने के लिए. आई थिंक देयर इज़ अ ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ एजुकेशन दैट इज़ रिक्वायर्ड इन ऑर्डर टू गिव एन ओपिनियन टू समवन कि वेयर शुड समवन इन्वेस्ट. मेरा ये ख्याल है कि यंगस्टर्स आर गेटिंग इनटू दिस यू ओनली लिव वंस थिंग कि जी वी नीड टू गेट रिच क्विकली. Why? Because some Instagram influencer or personality is doing that as well.
I think you've put it brilliantly. I would say to you that this book is very valuable to corroborate your intuition. There is a chapter by Tatja Karkainen. She's a Finnish scholar. She's from Finland. And she's done a chapter specifically on FOMO for YOLO. FOMO, fear of missing out. FOMO.
Yes. Very interesting. ये सुना था मैंने काफ़ी टाइम
पहले अपने सर्कल में बता. Don't you in your generation with your circle of friends ये FOMO का सीन है कि नहीं है?
बहुत है ये तो बल्कि हमें ये देखना चाहिए कहाँ पे नहीं है क्योंकि यार कि आई नीड टू चेक माई नोटिफिकेशंस इज समथिंग आई एम मिसिंग आउट. मैंने तो अपने फ़ोन से इट हैज़ बिन 2 weeks जब मैंने इंस्टाग्राम डाउनलोड किया फॉर दिस ना इन माई फ़ोन और हफ्ता मैंने उसको सही यूज़ किया है. मतलब वो हमारे कुछ दोस्त हैं उनको मीम्स देखते थे मीम्स सेंड करते थे लेकिन after a week I realized no, this is FOMO I'm getting into it. I deleted that. Now I'm in peace. So ये है.
So, what Tatia worked on was FOMO in digital assets. She was looking at cryptocurrency, particularly, which is part of YOLO capitalism. It's not just stock market. So, FOMO has driven people nuts. Her case study was not United States, it was Southeast Asia, ये Malaysia, Singapore वगैरह, Philippines, और यहाँ पे FOMO इतनी तगड़ी है जो आप कह रहे हो कि कहाँ नहीं है, ये सवाल होना चाहिए. This distorts people's minds too much कि कहीं और सीन कोई डाल रहा है और मैं उसका हिस्सा नहीं, और पता करो यार सीन किधर है और ये वो, and you become kind of paralyzed by it, that something good is happening somewhere. Well, it's certainly not happening here, wherever. It's not happening anywhere. It's virtual. It's made up. That's the problem. FOMO is a very toxic thing. Can you repeat the second part of your question? इसमें एक FOMO मैं cover करना चाह रहा था, लाजमी. What was the rest of the question?
Rest of the question ये है कि जो लोग इसमें इन apps में time invest करते हैं, what guideline they should abide by before getting into this thing?
So, in the United States, for example, there is a regulation that you can be penalized if you don't give a warning first कि my talk here does not constitute financial advice. अगर ये नहीं कहा तो it is financial advice and you will be treated as a broker and then penalized for your nonsense.
अच्छा.
ये बहुत अच्छी तगड़ी चीज़ की हुई है, तो हमेशा एक नीचे वो आ रहा होता है कि this is not financial advice. और लोगों की अब आदत भी बन गई है, मैंने देखा कि what I'm saying isn't professional advice, but और करके कहते हैं अच्छा है ना, ठीक कर दिया है. So that sort of responsibility has to be exercised. You said that it is a gamble. It is. Nobody understands where the world economy is growing. There are broad trends. There are some gurus who do outperform, but this is not for everybody to do. The more you follow the herd, the worse off your returns will be because there's somebody further ahead in the herd. You don't, lakir ka fakir वैसे ही ना बने. Be very, very cautious with this trading and financial stuff. Because I worked on Wall Street, matlab in equities, I have no personal delight in speculating. I don't get a kick out of it because ye to meri naukari thi. And I treated it very seriously because I was at the National Bank of Canada and they had a very strong professional culture where you were taught amanat, basically. Hamare zuban mein amanat kaha jata hai. Fiduciary duty is the English word for it. That you have somebody's money. You must be very responsible what you do with it because you are accountable to them. So this fiduciary duty mindset is very strong with me. That's why I've published so much on cryptocurrency, so many downloads. Matlab, it's almost like a YouTube video wale stats, but for a for a working paper. So that popularity, despite all of that, the fact is that cryptocurrencies में इतना लिखने के बावजूद मैंने कभी उसमें हाथ नहीं मारा, कभी खरीदे नहीं. Even though I knew that there's a lot of promise in cryptocurrencies, I didn't invest because there's a fiduciary duty mindset. And so I'm obliged that if I'm writing on this, that I owe honesty and integrity in my thoughts to the people. Therefore, I cannot own this and then write about it. So I never invested to keep my conscience clean. That is how people need to be in the world of investment. And if that's possible, then capitalism works. If that is possible, every system works. यानी कि लोग अगर इंसान के बच्चे बने तो any stage along historical materialism
extreme पे ना जाए और काम करते रहें तो every system may work.
And any system works, but you don't find these things innate in people. बदमाशी बहुत है.
उसके लिए फिर laws बनाने पड़ते हैं ना कि ये financial advice consider की जाएगी, फिर लोग ठीक हो जाता है.
कवानीन ना सिर्फ मंसूब करने होते हैं, उनको आयद भी करना पड़ता है, थोड़ी सी धैं पटास भी करनी पड़ती है. सिंगापुर करता है, अमेरिका करता है. How is it that people suddenly started talking like this? Oh, what I'm saying isn't financial advice, but it's because they have been trained into it in a short time, 15 years, less than that. So this book covers many of these aspects as well about how you should consider redesigning capitalism. That it works for the people, is what these people are doing right. Some authors, because this is an edited volume, so you have many different opinions. Some people are for it, some are against it. Some people point out that YOLO capitalism is something refreshing. Finally, somebody's standing up. But there are other people who are saying, wait a minute, these guys, they're a bunch of clowns too. They have FOMO, and they have all of these nonsense biases. There's a chapter specifically on the investment biases.
This is quite comprehensive.
It is 103,850 words. So I don't expect too many people to read the full text, but there are chapters of interest to each person.
It seems to be a short book. मतलब इतनी लेंथी डराने वाली बुक नहीं है और चैप्टर्स हैं इसमें जो कि इंडिपेंडेंट हैं दूसरों से. That's the big point.
Yes, and that's the beauty of it, because 14 authors means 14 different perspectives.
15 पेजेस का एक चैप्टर है.
बस और जान के हमने स्थान
On
रखा है
average, हाँ.
कि काम की बात करो, don't stretch the point and make a good point.
तो ये हम ऐड कर सकते हैं उसमें
Sure.
डिस्क्रिप्शन में.
Yes.
इसका पीडीएफ
No.
पीडीएफ नहीं कर सकते.
Absolutely not.
अच्छा, तो that concludes our discussion. Is there any point we missed?
I would just encourage your listeners, because that's already a select group who already have the decency, to consider where our economy and society is going a little bit more soberly. There's a lot to worry about, but it's tragic what people are doing, and at the very least, thinking about these things can lead to solutions to improve our society. थोड़ा सा ठंडे दिमाग से हमने चीज़ों को देखना है, ये मेरा मकसद है.